I had a baby as a result of an affair, and now his wife is reaching out to me. I, female 26, had an affair with a married man, male 42, a few years ago. I had no clue he was married when we first met and hooked up. I obviously looked him up on social media, and while he did have photos of his kids on there was absolutely no mention or photos of a wife at all. I found out that he was married about a month after we first got together, but he told me that it was just a marriage on paper, and that they basically lived separate lives and agreed to remain married for practical purposes until the kids were older. They owned a business, which she really ran, and he was just financially involved in. I knew at the time that I probably shouldn't believe him, but I convinced myself it was true. I was in my early 20s, and so attracted to him, and I guess almost infatuated with him. He made me feel so good. I know now that I should have ended it immediately, but I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. I was addicted to all of the attention he gave me, the great sex, the places he'd take me. I felt special. I was so naive. I got pregnant about a year into seeing him. I had always been so careful with preventing pregnancy, but during my relationship with him, I took stupid risks. I was so high in lust with this guy, it's embarrassing. The things he'd ask me to do, I'd say yes to almost anything, even when I knew that it was a bad idea. I was in love with him, or I thought I was. I hadn't intentionally wanted to get pregnant. I would of course dream about being his wife and having a family, but I knew that wouldn't be a possibility while he had this arrangement with his actual wife. I didn't get pregnant on purpose with any intention of him leaving her for me, even if I wished that we could be a real, normal couple. I was surprised by how excited I was to be pregnant with his baby. I wanted that baby once I found out I was pregnant. The thought of carrying this baby of the man that I loved was so special to me, but I knew he probably wouldn't feel the same. I told him I was pregnant, and he told me that I couldn't keep the baby. I expected his reaction, but I was devastated, and it hurt me to my core that he didn't feel the same way that I did. He offered to pay to make a whole weekend of it somewhere exciting. What the hell? And to buy me something special if I'd just please get rid of the baby. He explained that he didn't want any more kids, and that he couldn't openly be a father to another kid when he and his wife were still pretending to be happily married to the outside world. I agreed to what he wanted, and we made plans for him to pick me up and find somewhere out of town to go get it done. I was all packed the night he was going to pick me up, but I started to feel really scared and really unsafe about the whole thing. I took my bag and checked myself into a hotel to hide because I couldn't go with him. I texted him to say that I promised to never contact him again and to never name him as the father or go after child support if he'd promised to leave me alone. At first, he tried to sweet-talk me into doing what he wanted. When I didn't cave in, he said some very nasty things to me and that I essentially better never contact him again or show up at his door. I have a 2-year-old now. At times it's been difficult, but overall we're thriving as best as we can. I have kept my word about not naming him as the father or requesting child support. His wife contacted me on social media. Well, she's his ex-wife now. She wants to talk to me. She found out about me and told me that she divorced him 6 months ago. She wants her children to know their sibling and for my child to know his siblings. That's weird to me. I haven't responded back to her yet. I'm unsure about how to approach this. How do I respond to this? I wonder if I'm being selfish by not exploring an option for my child to know his siblings, if she's being genuine about that. If I was married and my husband fathered a child outside of our marriage, I don't think I'd feel the same that she does. In the comments, Psychological Cry says, OP, are you sure this is truly his ex-wife contacting you? It could be him using her account, or fake account, to initiate contact with you for some twisted reason. Please be careful and make wise decisions if and when agreeing to meet this woman and her kids. I know you want to do the right thing, just be careful. OP says, technically no, I have no way to know that it's actually her at this point. JudyRecords.com. This has court documents from all over the country. Search his name and state and see what comes up. Since she knows and is divorced now, I would summon him for child support. Ask for a DNA test. The money is for your child. Your child deserves it. It seems like OP felt unsafe with the father at some point. She was scared and uneasy for some reason. She doesn't want any contact with the guy, for concerns of her own safety. No money can buy safety. I'm worried about her gut feeling. Murder is the #1 killer of pregnant people. Not pregnancy or birth complications, murder. He wanted to take her somewhere out of town alone. He tried to make it sound like a romantic getaway when he was asking her to get an abortion. There is nothing romantic or fun about that, whether or not it was wanted. What are the chances, I wonder, that if she had gone and changed her mind after she was already far from home, that OP would have never returned? Sometimes that gut feeling is right. Sometimes that gut feeling saves your life. Oh my goodness, absolutely yes. I'm very happy that I was reading this and not hearing about a missing pregnant woman on Dateline. OP was very smart to trust her instincts and not be alone with a dude pressuring her for an abortion. Her choice to pursue child support if she wants. Not saying she should or shouldn't. The question is if she wants to see his ex and meet his kids. The whole thing is so weird. She doesn't know this woman, didn't know about this woman, and is being invited into their lives again. Could this woman be looking for support like childcare, or a friend, or a free therapist? Could she be trying to take OP's measure? Again, this woman's intentions might not be nefarious, but we also don't know her true goals here on why she contacted OP. I would say thanks but no thanks. So many people telling you to go for it for the sake of the child and possible child support, but I would say that you have good instincts which served you well. Don't ignore them now. You were leading a happy life with your child. You have survived so far without his financial help. Letting her and the children into your lives while inviting him back into your life too. You also don't know what her intentions are, or if it is even her who is contacting you. No matter what, it will be inviting him back into your life in some way. He made you feel unsafe and wanted you to get rid of your child. He also abandoned you and your child. He cheated on his wife and kids for a long time. He is not a good guy. I would say keep him out of your life. Continue as you are. I didn't have any instincts on that one personally, but when they mentioned that murder is the #1 killer of pregnant women, and that this is a very good possibility that murder was going to happen, my survival instincts have now been set off because, wow, when you frame it like that, they're going to an abortion clinic out of town on a romantic getaway. That's ludicrous. My dear sir, you forced me to do things sexually that I wasn't on board with before. You are going to take me into a secluded area of the woods, and I am going to disappear. I will become nothing. There is no trusting this man, and I don't know what the solution is about contacting that family. I personally wouldn't risk it. It sounds like he's trying to get to her for who knows what. Just logically thinking about it, how would the wife have found out about the affair and the affair baby unless he decided to say something about it, which I highly doubt. He cheated for such a long time that there's no way he's going to explode that marriage. It does not make sense. And now, on to the update. I made a post 3 weeks ago, and things have only gotten stranger. I had an affair with a married man a few years ago, I regret it, and I will never do anything like that ever again. I knew it was wrong from the very beginning, but he captivated me. I was naive. I allowed myself to believe when he told me they were pretty much just married on paper for the sake of their kids. I got pregnant, and while he tried to talk me into getting an abortion, I ultimately decided to keep the baby. I have a 2-year-old little boy now. I promised this man that I wouldn't expose our affair, and I wouldn't formally identify him as the father or request child support. I did that because he was becoming very nasty about the whole thing, and I felt like due to that mess that I had created, and the way I felt by the end of it, a clean break with no involvement with him would be the best thing for everyone. I moved back to where my family is, hundreds of miles from where he and his family live. About a month ago, his ex-wife reached out to me via social media, claiming they had been divorced for 6 months and that she wanted our children to be able to know each other. Now, their kids are teenagers, so I didn't really think they'd want anything to do with the toddler and the woman their father was having an affair with. It seemed odd to me. After posting here, I sort of decided that I wouldn't respond to her. I'd just ignore it. She just sent me the one message, so it wasn't as if she was badgering me about talking to me or meeting me. On Friday night, I decided to message her. I don't really know why. I think it was really just for my sake, so I could have the chance to apologize to her. I told her that I would be more comfortable speaking with her face to face since I couldn't trust that it was really her. She said that she understood. I was too nervous to meet her in person, but we did a video chat. I didn't know what to expect, if this was all a ploy just to unleash her fury on me or what. I mean, I deserve that. She wouldn't be wrong to feel that way. It was really her. She told me she discovered our affair when she found communications between the two of us after our relationship had ended. She told me that I'm one of many women that he had affairs with over the years, and she knew about somebody even before he met me. But she didn't divorce him at the time. Finding out about my child was the final straw for her. I told her I was sorry for my relationship with her husband and admitted that I knew he was married. She graciously told me she forgives me and that while she harbored a lot of anger towards me initially, she ultimately blames her husband. I'm not blameless, but she chooses to not hate me essentially. She said she couldn't have said this 6 months ago or a year ago when she first found out about me, but she has moved past that. She still has anger toward him, in addition to many other emotions surrounding him. She started pouring out her heart to me about their 20-plus year marriage and life together, and it was very awkward because, what do I even say? Her kids know about me and my son. She says they're very mad at their father. Somehow, I don't think they're mad about the fact that he's not involved with my son's life, and why would they be mad about that? I would hate me if I were them. I told her with my son being so little right now, I don't really feel comfortable with him meeting her kids or being involved with their family. I feel unsure about it, and it's just not something I feel that needs to happen right now. Then she told me her ex-husband was in a bad accident 2 months ago. He's fine now, still not allowed to return to all his normal activities just yet, but will be fine. He's probably the most physically active person I've ever met. Barely ever seems to sit down, so he must be terribly annoying to be around if he's not allowed to go all the time. She told me that he wants to meet my son. Apparently, she moved back in with him temporarily when he first came home from the hospital. She said the accident really shook him up, and he's been expressing a lot of regret about my son not being involved and not providing for him. So now it's like, was everything she said just a lie and he somehow got her to reach out to me on his behalf? And she actually did it? It almost felt like a relief talking to her initially, but then it's like, was any of that true, or were you just trying to be his messenger? I don't even know if that part is true now. Why wouldn't he just contact me himself? I'm just feeling so uneasy about the whole thing now. In the comments, Codeman2542 says, I'm going to be straight with you. The man is likely high in narcissistic traits, and the woman is not going to leave him. She will likely end up with him again. I wouldn't trust anything either of them say as genuine. Think about your son in all of this, because if he is emotionally or physically hurt, it could linger the rest of his life. He would be better off thinking his dad just isn't around. OP says, he thinks he's the greatest thing on planet Earth. At one time, I found this attractive for some reason. Please get a lawyer. They might try to take your child. Get your ducks in a row. OP says, well, the advice was very mixed. Edit to add, and I was cautious. I didn't give her any of my contact info, didn't tell her my son's name, kept personal details very sparse. How did she find your profile? Might be time to delete Facebook and make your Insta private. I wouldn't put it past them to try to use this baby as a second chance for their marriage. It's either going to be a Lifetime movie or a Dateline episode. I do not see it ending well. I see stress and trouble and a lot of legal fees. You have every right to be suspicious of their motives. I think you should end the conversation and interaction with them at this point. I think it was good that you got to meet his wife, ex-wife, and hear her side of things, but I don't think it's a good idea to do anything else. You can certainly acknowledge it to them and thank them for their offer to meet or whatever, but you both need to move on. He sounds like a real piece of garbage, by the way, and I wouldn't put it past him that this is just another manipulation. Who knows if he even was in an accident? Please, spare me the sob story, just end it here and focus on raising a good son who won't do this kind of thing to someone else. So she divorced him, yet she is his nurturer and caretaker due to an accident, and now they both want you and the kid in their life? Girl, get the hell out of here. Throw the whole family away because the toxicity surrounding their dynamic is spooky. There is no way that woman has made peace with you as the affair partner or your child as the affair baby. Their teenagers are not interested in a sibling bond with a toddler. Don't volunteer as tribute for this BS. If you truly want the dude to be a dad to your kid, start things slow with video chats, and that's it. There is no way you should consider meeting in person, and definitely not alone with just them. OP replies, "It's all very bizarre. Based on everything she said about their relationship, their bond, their family, her life has always revolved around him and continues to do so even after divorcing him. She seems clingy and desperate to be in his life, almost proud that she was his wife and all of the other women were nothing important to him. One woman divorced and the other cut off/abandoned, and he's still manipulating both of them. I feel so sorry for the both of these women, and Chumley Boy gets chased after and adored by everyone. It's like the script on a bad TV show with the enigmatic husband who wants to show that he's changed his ways. What an F-wit he is, and they are, for believing in him so much, and his BS. It's sad that I've seen this in real life before. Seeing how OP says he's fit, I suspect the sex is good and or he's hot, which gives him unnatural control over these women. Sometimes it's really that simple. I need to know what the final twist and angle is because this is playing off weird as hell. It's not weird at all. The husband is a manipulating piece of shit, and he's unfortunately very good at it. Agreed. At some level, I would fear for the child's well-being if they ever decide to meet. The way he acted about the abortion was effing terrifying. He was absolutely getting off on making her shoulder all of the risk in their relationship, from pushing for completely unprotected sex to love-bombing her into accepting a just plausible enough explanation to make her look like a purposeful homewrecker. It makes me seriously wonder if anything this guy ever does, including interactions with his older kids, is actually sincere, or if it's all manipulation tactics aimed at controlling the women in his life. Am I the asshole for demanding my house guest pay me for what she drank? I, 29 female, was asked by a friend, 27 female, that I went to university with if she could stay for a few days at my place on her vacation. She came a couple days ago and also brought her sister, 31 female, which was fine with me. Her sister declined going out to dinner with us and wanted to stay in. That was fine, and we left and went to eat. Well, turns out her sister is a recovering alcoholic and wasn't coping that well being in a different place. We come home a few hours later, and I found out that she got drunk and raided my liquor cabinet for what she could find. She ended up drinking my very expensive gin, $300 USD, that was given to me by my dad. It's not something that I would have ever offered guests. When she woke up the next morning, I told her that she needed to pay me for it. I didn't even open it. She started freaking out, saying that it was a mistake and that she couldn't afford the rest of her trip if that's what it really costs. I told her that she technically stole it from me and that she needed to pay me for it. My friend from uni says that her sister is struggling in recovery, but they really can't afford to compensate me without it ruining their trip. I asked them to leave, and they were both very upset about it. While I do understand that it was a moment of weakness, I still think she needs to pay me for it. If she broke it by accident, that would be a different story. Am I the asshole for wanting her to give me the money for it? In the comments, Oskman7 says, Info, did she take a few glasses, or did she drink a whole bottle of gin? Edit, the friend's sister is definitely an asshole in this situation. Addiction is a cruel monster, but it doesn't excuse shitty behavior. However, the real asshole here is OP's friend. Why would she leave a recovering alcoholic on her own like that? Did she not notice the distress that her sister was in from being in a new place? OP's friend would make the worst Alcoholics Anonymous sponsor. She is also a shitty sister, not the asshole. OP replies, it was empty when we came back. It was a large size, but she spilt what she didn't drink, I'm assuming. Wisewoman707 says, "Not the asshole. Did your friend warn you about the drama she was bringing into your doorstep with a struggling, recovering alcoholic? Not your problem that paying for the alcohol that she stole is expensive, or that paying for it, in other words, being responsible for her actions, would ruin their trip. Good for you for kicking them out and not tolerating this outrageous behavior. She needs to be held accountable for her choices, especially if she ever hopes to recover." And OP replies, "No, she didn't mention it at all. It was high up in my kitchen with my spices. It wasn't in view." Not the asshole. They're prioritizing not ruining their trip over paying back the expensive item I stole from a generous host. Not cool. She needs to suck it up, ruin her trip, and account for her actions. Accountability is a huge part of addiction recovery. This exactly. Why is blame always assigned to the person who was wronged, trying to make it right? "Oh no, we did something bad to you, and if you don't let us get away with it, you're going to ruin everything!" Not the asshole. I feel badly for you, as I suspect the bottle of gin had sentimental value as well. That cannot be replaced. Your guests should have told you in advance that the sister is in recovery, so you could have prepped, i.e., locking your liquor or storing it elsewhere. Furthermore, addiction is a terrible thing, but it isn't an excuse for stealing. If making reparations ruins their vacation, then that is the consequence. Quote, "No, she didn't mention it at all. It was high up in my kitchen with my spices. It wasn't in view." Not the asshole. This woman stayed behind, and as soon as you were gone, went looking for alcohol to fuel her bender. She planned this. If the trip is stressing her out so much, she drank most of a large bottle of gin on her own and got so drunk that she spilled the rest. The trip needs to be over. And your friend is the asshole too for not at least warning you about this. My take on this is you don't just punch someone in the face willingly and then expect them to forgive you and be like, "Oh, it's a mistake. I've got an addiction to punching people in the face. I can't control myself. And if you give me consequences for my actions, it's gonna ruin my day." Like, no, go to hell. Pay me my money back. You know that was a gin that you weren't supposed to touch. Get out of my house. I don't care if your holiday is ruined. Screw you. Not the asshole, OP. And now, onto the update. Thanks everyone for making me not seem like a monster. I requested the money, and her sister sent me an e-transfer. We weren't super close, but more met up from time to time. It wasn't a friendship that I'm necessarily devastated over this happening. In the comments, Toria Lyons says, "She totally knew how expensive the gym was likely to be too. All the alcoholics I've ever met know a lot about alcohol." I know that this is a serious problem, but I'm also picturing that episode of Black Books where they accidentally drink the Pope's expensive wine and then drunkenly try and brew their own replacement. They'd all laugh at me if they knew what I was trying to do, to create a new strain of super wine in half an hour with a fraction of nature's resources and a fool for an assistant. Bernard Black, he's mad, they'd say. He's insane. He's dangerous. Well, I'll show them. I'll show them all. That's the inner machinations of the alcoholic sister in this instance. I can't afford to replace the item I stole. Cool. Calls police? Thieves hate this one cool trick. People often seem to forget that you can, and sometimes should, just let the cops sort it out, especially when others are being quite unreasonable and a wake-up call is needed. Don't ask if you're an asshole, just call the non-emergency line and report a non-violent theft. The question is, will the cops do something, or is their excuse that it's a civil matter? Our next post is by user FreshReward8901, titled, "I'm about to leak a video of my stepdad and I'm not guilty. My mum has recently got back with her abusive partner. She won't listen to anything anyone says, including her kids, family, and friends. And when we try to say something, she acts like we are in the wrong. They've gotten back together 5 times, and I'm so sick of it, having to listen to the constant arguing and abuse. Today, I just got recommended a bunch of videos I forgot I had. It's of my stepdad abusing my mum, his son, and being ableist to my youngest sister, as well as him admitting to being on drugs and DUI. It's a compilation of many events ending up being over an hour's worth of videos that I had taken before I gave up on trying to get my mum to see reason. While the police and my mother won't listen to me, I'm sure his family and workplace would love to hear all about this, especially when he's been claiming to be clean for 2 years, cough cough. I know my mother is going to hate me after this, but frankly, I don't care. If he hasn't done anything wrong, why does this video change any of that? Thanks for listening, Reddit. Make sure to keep his downfall in your prayers. In the comments, Calgary Calico says, make backup copies of the videos and hide whatever they're on. You want as many as possible. Put them on flash drives, external hard drives, whatever you got. It's always good to have backups. Have the police seen the videos? If not, take one of your copies into a police station and explain the situation. If you have actual proof, they may be able to do something about it. And be careful. He is physically abusive, on hard drugs, and drinks at the same time. He is completely unpredictable and could try to seriously hurt you if he thinks he'll lose everything because of you. It would be your fault in his mind that his life is effectively over. Yeah, just what all these other people said, OP. Tread extremely carefully because people on drugs that are abusive and violent like this will take you out to the woods and just end you. Or they'll just end you in their own house. They don't really care when they're on drugs. It's not like their brain is working correctly. I know you're a teenager and you may not be completely thinking this entire situation through, but you may just be putting yourself in more danger than is worth currently. And now, onto the update. So, 212 days ago, I made a Reddit post about posting videos of my stepdad admitting to abuse, among other things. I'm going to be honest, and promptly forgot I posted it. I don't use Reddit. A bunch of people asked for updates, so here's your update. Nearly a year later. Honorary warning for abuse. Sorry it gets a bit dark. Not a bad ending though, more of a hopeful one. I sent the video to his family a week after that post because I posted that as we were in the process of moving in with him. Stupid timing, I know, because I couldn't find a reliable way to contact his work. It all went south, as many of you predicted. His family did not give a single shit. Me and my stepfather ended up getting into physical fights every other day. At least I can say for someone double my weight, I was holding my ground pretty well. He started drinking a lot more, and I started getting a lot more aggressive with him, practically goading him so he would leave my siblings alone. I kept this up for a good while before I woke up to my mum being choked by him. I ran out to try and stop him, but I just blanked. I couldn't think on how to stop him. I was just panicking. He ended up stopping by himself, but I'm still afraid of what would have happened if he didn't. I stopped provoking him then. I just left him alone and only interrupted if I believed someone was actively endangered. We couldn't afford to move out and were afraid that he could take our stuff from us if we did legally and basically hold us there because we couldn't live otherwise. 2 weeks ago, we got into contact with a distant aunt of mine. She runs crisis homes for victims of domestic abuse and community help-centered places. We didn't know any of that at first, only that she knew people and might know a lawyer willing to help. She ended up offering to help us leave and get to one of her crisis homes and set us up with a lawyer. I'm so grateful for her. Me and my mum usually despise being given charity, but I don't know how much further this would have gotten if we didn't take it. Soon we leave, and we are never going back. I still don't know if he'll face consequences for how he has ruined us, or if we'll even get out unnoticed, but I'm happy and hopeful for the first time in a while. If you have any questions, or I missed something, please ask. I want to give people information on how to get out, even if it's just learning from my mistakes. Sorry if this is formatted weird. I had to repost as I missed a chunk. In the comments, the hat on the cat says, I'm so sorry you went through that, and so glad you escaped. You sound like a very brave young person. Your younger siblings are lucky to have you. I'm glad that you're leaving, but you are far kinder than I would be. No way I'd leave him physically intact. You're so brave for protecting your family. You said in your last post that your mum went back 5 times before. Are you sure she won't go back this time? What makes now different? OP says, Before this, it wasn't as physically aggressive, and the terms of us staying at the crisis home is we aren't allowed to be in contact with him because we will be staying with other people escaping domestic abuse. And I don't think that my mum is heartless enough to subject the other women to him. I'm hoping these stakes are high enough that she can get her shit together. This is one of those situations where you love someone, but you don't like them. OP will probably never forgive his or her mum for putting them, their siblings, and even herself back into that situation. Especially because she got back with him so many times. I assume that I'm older than OP, but even with those extra years and some therapy under my belt, I still sometimes resent my mum for getting back with my shitty father, and she only did it once. It's so hard not to blame her for my issues caused by my father. If she had just stayed away, I wouldn't be XYZ, which might hold true for some things, but it's not fair to put that on her. I very much resent my mother for not standing up to her husband when he was emotionally and mentally abusive. She fully acknowledged that he was and sent me to quote-unquote therapy, read an extremely religious counselor so that I would learn how to handle it. I am extremely low contact with her now and have a fair amount of CPTSD from my childhood. I resent her so deeply now. God, OP is too young to have to shoulder all of this. Stepfather is obviously a piece of shit, but OP's mum failed him too. Yes, she was abused, but she allowed her children to be tormented by that monster. Leaking those videos is such a teenage move though. I'm not criticizing OP, but putting yourself and your mother in more danger while you are halfway through moving in with your abuser is just wild. It took a really good therapist spelling it out for me to realize making myself the target was unhelpful and potentially harmful to the people that I wanted to protect. Even after that, it's such an ingrained behavior that I have trouble not acting as the family lightning rod. I wish I didn't see myself in this post as much as I do. I hope his mum doesn't get back with his shithead sperm donor and they can begin to heal. Our next post is by user Mousy Shallon, titled, "My dad is pretending that I'm not getting married." So my dad has always been a very show-off person. Announcements about grades, telling everyone how great his daughters are doing, telling off my sister for having a job that he can't show off. When he divorced from my mum, he was a good parent for a while, and then he met Eva. Eva is way younger, has had a lot of work done, and used to send him flirty messages when he was still married. They got married very early in the relationship because they've known each other ages. She told him not to text us too much because we are adults. She checks his phone all the time. She forbade him from seeing us Christmas Day or St. Stephen's Day because he needed to be with his new family. And it would have been disrespectful to her for him to see his ex-wife, and she's overall been an absolute nightmare. And he follows everything she tells him to do. Now I'm getting married and told my dad that he's invited, but she's not. I've met the woman once, and I don't like her. Plus, I know my father isn't a great person, and he'd be making jabs at my mum about being older than Eva, etc. To make it fair, my mum's boyfriend is also not invited, although he's a sweetheart. My dad's answer to my invite has been to pretend that nothing is happening. I sent him a save the date, and he sent me a thumbs up emoji. He hasn't asked me one question about the wedding, not even the venue, even though he told me shortly before meeting Eva that he was looking forward to me and my sister getting married and how excited he was. Myself and my fiancé are different religions and cultures, so everyone's had a lot of questions about how we are handling that. Turns out he hasn't told Eva that I'm getting married, and he hasn't told anyone else, so he's just planning to say that he has a work trip and come to the wedding. I don't actually think he's going to show up. I think he'll say that he's going to, and then not show at the last minute, but my sister thinks that he'll show up with her and make a whole scene, because he told her Eva has just as much right to be there as your mum. What? Anyone else dealt with something similar? Do I need a backup to walk me down the aisle? In the comments, Sailor Spyro says, "I just want to point out that your dad is in an abusive relationship. His new wife is cutting him off from his family, his support system, so she can have more control over him. He probably won't be allowed to go to the wedding because she's not invited, and probably wouldn't have been allowed to even if she was. Your dad is an ass all on his own, but I think it's important to recognize that he is still capable of being abused and that it's happening. OP says, yes, they both suck. He has always been a cheater. At least 3 other women during the span of 10 years that we have evidence of. And I think, no evidence, he was cheating on my mum with her, so that's why she's constantly monitoring his phone and not allowing him to leave the house. We told him not to marry her and that her behavior is very concerning, but he seems very blind. It sounds like he wants to come and he knows the only way him coming without his wife is possible if he lies about it. He risks getting quote-unquote caught to be able to go, which speaks volumes about their relationship. But if she checks his phone, you're causing further risk of her finding out if you keep messaging him about the wedding. Stick to phone calls so there is no record. I hope he can make it and there's no drama. OP replies, I rang him the first time to tell him that I was getting married and then sent him the save the date the second time asking if he was coming. I didn't know that he hadn't told her at the time. I've no idea why the wife wouldn't let him go to his daughter's wedding if she's as amazing as he says. On why his mum's boyfriend isn't invited, OP says, far more drama if I include him and exclude Eva. It is not worth the headache. He will for sure not show up if I invite my mum's boyfriend and not his wife. My mum understands that even though my dad is not the best dad ever, I still want him there. They haven't been together that long, so she's okay with her boyfriend staying at home. Plus, then he can stay with the dogs and she doesn't have to worry about getting a dog sitter. Most of the family is going as well, so there's nobody to look after them. 30 Ninjas in my bag says, communicate and ask him if he is coming to the wedding. Tell him that if he turns up with Eva, they will be removed. Always have backups when it comes to flaky parents. It's your wedding, and his wife has no right to be anywhere near your wedding. OP replies, I've asked him twice, and he said, of course, but then told my sister that he hasn't told his wife I'm getting married, and that he'll lie to his wife and tell her he's going away for work. I feel like he's either going to chicken out and not come, or tell her she can go with him. I mean, it's clear that he's lying to his wife so that he can go. I would hire security because obviously you know your dad better than the internet does, but sounds like he's putting his relationship at risk by going, which means he's in a horrendous relationship if he has to lie to go to his own daughter's wedding, but that's another Reddit post. Best of luck. 1. Invite mum's boyfriend. Good behavior is to be rewarded. 2. Ask mum to walk you down the aisle. If you feel like it, and if he shows without Eva, you can play a father-daughter dance. 3. Hire security. If not for the church, then for the reception. Give them Eva's photo and your dad's. Label them as dad can come in if not accompanied by Eva. If Eva arrives, they both get escorted out. OP replies, I have number 3 covered, but we'd know before the reception because the only flight arrives the night before, so we would know by then. Yeah, sticky situation all around. I would advise that dad to get the hell out of that relationship as soon as possible because, it's karma for him being such a cheater all the time that he ends up with an affair partner that is constantly monitoring him. That is very much karma. But at the same time, it's not okay to stay with someone that is abusing you like that. At the end of the day, it's his life and his choice if he wants to stick with this woman because she is so amazing, as he has pointed out in the past. But your partner not allowing you to go to your child's wedding, that is truly insane. I really do wish the dad gets out and makes his life better for himself, but there's a lot of people that get too comfortable in situations like this. Very weird. And now, onto the update. So it turns out my dad ended up telling Eva about my wedding and telling her that she was invited to the wedding to avoid problems. She got herself a dress and booked a hotel, etc. My dad tried to convince me to invite her, but his biggest selling point was that he thought that it would be an amazing time to introduce Eva to my mum and my mum's whole family. Why he would think my mum would want to meet this woman is beyond me, and that she would feel excluded otherwise. He always rubs in our faces his new family, even calling it his new family. keeps cancelling every dinner that he sets up with my sister due to some emergency involving Eva, or tells us to call Eva Mum. Both me and my sister are way beyond the point of calling some random mum since we both moved out, and he's being ridiculous. He called me again and again, trying to convince me, and I said no, explaining that I knew the only reason he wanted to bring his wife to the wedding was to upset Mum, and that I wasn't going to let the two of them do that. He makes jabs at my mum every time he's around her about how great his new wife is. I thought the whole thing was over until I sent him some information about the wedding, and I guess he started feeling guilty and told us that he booked the flight for Eva as well, and he booked himself on the same flight as my mum. Changed his whole flight plans just so that he could be on the flight with her, so that my mum and Eva could still meet. AKA, he could still rub his new wife in her face and try and screw with my mum's head by putting her down and making comparisons. And then Eva would just go off and shop while he was at the ceremony. I'm not sure if this was true, or if he was going to try and bring her to the wedding and hope she didn't get kicked out. I'm trying to convince my mum to change her flight so he can't get inside her head 12 hours before the wedding. I don't know if I should uninvite him. In the comments, Sisu143 says, "So why is it important to you that this man is at your wedding? It's giving you nothing but anxiety. Do you dislike your mum this much to allow this?" Oh my god, yes. What has your mum done to you that you'd facilitate hurting her? Why does he know so many details of your mum's travel plans? OP replies, "She is the main reason that I haven't uninvited him yet. She keeps saying that I need to have a relationship with him and be more understanding. He knows because he asked, and we figured he was trying to avoid being on the same flight as her. I'm so sorry. This should not be a part of your wedding memories. I would suggest mentioning to your father that he is spoiling your wedding. He is completely unaware of anything but himself. You may need to adjust to the reality and leave him behind." In your shoes, I'd invite mother's boyfriend, change their flights, include mum in hair and makeup, and make sure she turns out looking $1 million. If he's hell-bent on bringing Eva, and you're not inclined to ditch the pair of them, the least you can do for mum is to make 100% sure that she's got backup, her boyfriend, and looks fabulous enough to stick it in their eye. And make sure that mum features prominently in your speech. Why the flying fa did you invite him to begin with? Want a wrecked wedding? Let him come. He'll make your mum feel like shit, make a scene to get his trophy toy in the doors, remind you 1,000,000 times that you're nothing but the old family, not his new, better one, and plastic, fantastic bimbo will probably be about as pleasant as him. Dad, you're out, your Barbie doll is out, enjoy your new family. I'll make as much room for you as you have done for me. Security will absolutely guide you to Mount F off if you do try showing up." And now onto the final update. The wedding has happened. It just took a bit of time to update because it's my life and it all went south and was too raw to try and write it in a coherent way. It still probably won't be super coherent. I asked him to change his flight because he had specifically asked me what flight my mum was on so he could avoid her, as he had said. And my mum was flying with my grandpa, so it would have been quite hard to change their flights to avoid him. My dad told me that he'd changed flights and that he'd invent some lie to tell Eva. He also said that I was a horrible person for not believing him when he told me that he had not booked the flight out of spite. But he did tell my mum that he booked the flight on purpose so that she could meet his new wife. And what reason would there be for wanting them to meet other than to be an asshole? I thought the whole thing was resolved, and my mum was really adamant that she wanted my dad to be there because I don't have a great relationship with him, and she knew that it would have meant the end of the relationship if I uninvited him. Fast forward to 2 days after the conversation, my dad rebooked his flight and sent me a message to say that he had changed flights. And then that evening he calls me. I answered the phone and I could hear someone screaming down the phone. It turns out that Eva got her hands on my dad's phone, read the messages where I asked him to reschedule the flight, and she rang me shouting down the phone that I am unhinged, I am a horrible person, I am effed in the head. She said that I am so weird because I'm in my 30s and I still talk to my parents. This one was really weird because am I meant to stop at a certain age? And that I'm jealous of the fact that my dad has a new life. I was very calm and said that I'm sorry that she's upset, that the issues around the wedding aren't really related to her directly, and that my dad was trying to upset my mum. I also said that my mum's partner is not coming either, so it wouldn't be fair to have her there. She started shouting that my mum was a fat old cow, and I lost it. I absolutely lost it. In this whole thing, my mum has said nothing bad about Eva. I told her that I never had any issue with her until now, but that she's a crazy bear who is super controlling, and that I was glad that I never invited her. Then I hung up because, by that stage, it had been 2 minutes of her shouting at me, and I didn't feel like there was any point in talking any longer. The whole time this was going on, my dad was in the background saying feebly, "Oh no, don't be mad at her," while she was shouting down the phone at me. Anyway, next day, my dad calls me and said that Eva was upset because he didn't tell her about changing the flights and that I was awful for responding to her like that. He also said, "Do you really think this is my fault?" And I said yes. And he said, "Do you really refuse to take any responsibility? None of this would have happened if you had invited her like I asked you to." And I said, does he actually think he has any say in my wedding when he didn't even ask me what type of ceremony I had? Never asked to see my dress or get involved in any way, monetarily or otherwise? He asked me if he was still invited, and I said, obviously not. He then told me to be careful what I wrote in my messages to him because she was monitoring his phone. And I said that I'm not speaking to him again, so that won't be a problem. The wedding was good. My mum walked me down the aisle, and there was nobody there to cause drama, so in the end, it all worked out for the best. The whole thing was just a lot more dramatic than I originally thought it would be. We thought he might end up not coming because he was too entangled in his lies, but for sure did not expect the call that I got. And it was very close to the wedding when all the drama happened. In the comments, Tack Wombat says, "Dad was a horrible partner to OP's mother, and now he's stuck with a horrible partner, and his children want nothing to do with him. He made that bed, and he should enjoy lying in it. Has to tell his daughter to be careful what she texts because he's being monitored. Doesn't think that that's a problem? He is definitely in an abusive relationship. No one can help him unless he wants to be helped, and he sounds like he doesn't want help. I can see why OP wouldn't want any part of this situation. Because if he decides to get help, he will admit that he threw away his whole family for a new hellish family, and he is too proud for that. Dad is a dumbass, and he's just finally reaping what he sowed his entire life. I'm just upset that OP's mum kept trying to convince OP to invite the dad after all the stuff that he did because of new wife. I would have burned that bridge and left him to fend for himself long ago. So after a lifetime of cheating, the dad gets stuck with a paranoid woman who monitors himself 24/7. Sounds like karma to me. The petty side of me would keep texting him being like, "Dinner with your mistress was good last night. I like her more than your wife." Things like that for funsies, knowing that she's reading them. Have you heard about the great news about Mum? It's amazing! Best to not tell your wife about this. If she's still monitoring you, please call me from work at the usual time. I just wanted to say thank you for putting aside your differences and meeting Mum, Mum's boyfriend, and me for dinner. It reminded me of the good old days. It felt like we were a family again. Love you lots. P.S. I'll remember to keep the pictures off of social media so that Eva doesn't get upset. Love heart emoji face. It also sounds like OP's dad is an abuser himself, at least emotionally. At the very least, he's an enabler of his new wife. He is not at all innocent. I see the comments pointing out her dad is in an abusive relationship, and that may be true, but it's not OP's job to save him, and at a certain point, you have to walk away for your own sake. I very much agree with that sentiment. I do think that it's unhealthy for OP to continue being around him and his bullshit. I think he's made it more than obvious that he doesn't care what impact he has on her life and her immediate family's life, because He's going along with the monitoring and then making that OP's fault. Like, how dare you yell back at my abusive, controlling wife when she's yelling at you down the phone? Do you know how that makes us feel? It makes us feel inadequate, okay? We can't even yell at you without some ramifications. How dare you change the flight that your mum's on because I told her and you expressly that I was going there to attack and abuse that woman because I hate myself. Yeah, at some point, you just have to cut contact with these people. He's made his bed, and he's more than happy to lie in it. He is so heckin' comfy. I understand wanting to continue to maintain a relationship with your father, but when he doesn't care, and he actively tries to sabotage your and your mum's life, it's time to cut the cord. It doesn't matter if you want a relationship. I think what's healthy for everyone is that you get rid of this person. It's not good to keep people like that around. I, 33 female, read my husband's 37 male journal, and in it, he says that he hates me and hopes I die. My husband has kept a semi-regular journal throughout our 4-year relationship. He does not keep it hidden, and up until now, I have always respected his privacy. We had a heated conversation, and my gut told me to read it, so after he left for work, I did. He wrote several times that he hates me, and at one point, he said when I was sick, he hoped I would die. When I read those words, I packed up me and our baby and went to a friend's where I'm staying now. I took pictures of all the pages. I told him I just need some space to cool off after our conversation and that I will be home soon. I booked with my therapist and contacted a lawyer. We had a rough patch recently that lasted about 2 weeks. It was a dark time, but we pulled through. There was no violence, no moments where I was afraid of him, just sincere conversations about difficult feelings. The notes of hatred correspond with that rough patch. The rest of the journal is tame and reflects the man that I know and love. Mostly little pep talks around work and family stuff, goals, habit tracking. He has sent me several warm messages since I left. He says he's glad I'm taking space for myself and that he looks forward to reconnecting when I come home. It's okay to have little hiccups, that he loves me, etc. I was sure that our relationship was over the moment I read that he hates me, or even the moment that I felt the need to violate his privacy, but the warm messages and the rest of the journal have me wavering a little. I understand the need to blow off steam when things are tense, and journaling is a healthy way to do that, but never even in our darkest moments have I fantasized about his death. Splitting up maybe, but this feels so sinister. I don't know how I could ever feel safe around him again. Is this just healthy venting, or am I overreacting here? Has anyone else had similar thoughts about a spouse that they then got over? Or is this a man that I need to protect myself and my baby from? Edit to add context, the rough patch was about his feelings for another woman. He didn't cheat, but his friendship with her makes me uncomfortable. The part of the journal where he says he hates me was written as a love letter to her. He says he thinks about me dying and being replaced. In the comments, Jealous Ad says, I'm married 17 years, and I've never wished my spouse would die. Like what? Does he know that you've seen this? He just left it out like he wanted you to see it. And you are the mother of his child. OP says, he doesn't know I've seen it, he always has left it out. It is over. He wrote a love letter in his journal to another woman? You know that it's more than a friendship, no matter what he says to your face. Stay strong, contact an attorney, go to your home while he is at work, and gather more of your belongings. I am sorry, don't believe his words now. He is seeing a strong woman stand up for herself, and reality is hitting him in the face. Email those pictures to at least one person you trust before he finds out you've seen them. He wishes you dead? And no, you are not overreacting. That is how he feels about you. All the other is an act. Girl, check if he's taken a life insurance out in your name with him as beneficiary. Especially because they're fighting over the fact that he has feelings for another woman. Not a good combination of factors. And do not be alone with him again. If he wants to meet to talk, you can do it out in public somewhere. If you need to go get your things, have someone go with you when he's at work, just in case he shows up for some reason. Or even see if you can get a police escort. I know people deal with heavy feelings in their journals and can write some crazy stuff, but this just seems out of bounds. Yeah, he might be venting, but even if he is, it would be pretty disturbing to find out your spouse thought about you like that, especially in relation to him being interested in another woman. And unfortunately, the stakes are too high if he isn't just venting. It is. My heaviest feelings are either grief about a loved one who passed, watching someone I want around my age, like my 15-year-old cat starting to get cloudy eyes, and hatred of myself. No one I love, not ever, not even a little. The angriest I write about them is that I am mad about a behavior or action. I haven't ever written about an animal. The humans around me? Unthinkable. Not even humans I dislike or have had serious conflicts with. I don't want to be around them, but they should get to be around at all, like Jesus effing Christ. Yeah, I agree with that one too. I feel like it's too dangerous of a territory for OP to be messing around with and giving this guy the benefit of the doubt, because a love letter to do with emotional intimacy or emotional cheating with someone else, which includes, I want to kill my wife? What in the true crime podcast is going on here? Like, that seems like you are going to be murdered, OP. He is a psycho. I would love to know the full story of how he arrived at this point, with the fact that he can journal about hating you and hoping you die, and then leaving it out in public for you to go discover, because it's not like he was hiding it. He is not hiding this. What has he been watching? Who has he been talking to? What has led to him doing this? That is sick. And now, onto the update. I hope I'm doing this right. Thank you so much for all the advice and words of encouragement. Some of it was tough to read, but still deeply appreciated. I wanted to do an update because a lot of people were concerned for my safety. I took a comment as advice and sent the pictures to a trusted friend. She pointed out that a passage I initially read as "every day I think about telling her" actually very clearly says "killing her." I guess my brain couldn't comprehend that at first. I received a ton of helpful perspective and support, but that comment in particular might have saved my life. After I digested that, I called a crisis line, and they were quite helpful in talking me through the shock. They also put me in touch with a center that is helping me get more affordable legal help. I bought some more time from my husband. I told him that I'm enjoying getting out of town, and I'd like to stay an extra night or two. I have therapy tomorrow and an appointment with a social worker to make a safety plan. I feel like I have a good crew of family, friends, and professionals supporting me. Absolutely zero regrets now about reading his journal. My gut told me something was off, but I couldn't have imagined a worst-case scenario as bad as this. I'm so glad the inner alarm bells were louder than my conscience this time. Nothing about this marriage is worth risking my life to salvage. In the comments, I think me and this entire subreddit are applauding you right now and are so relieved that you are taking these actions and protecting yourself. No marriage is worth being another statistic for. When I saw your post, I was horrified for you, and I am personally so glad you got the hell out of there ASAP. Sincerely, I hope it is onwards and upwards for you from now on, OP. Yeah, I've been thinking about her since I read the first post. I told my husband about it. I am so glad she's going to be okay. OP, we are so proud of you. He will temporarily be even more dangerous once he realizes you are leaving, and especially once he realizes it will cost him a lot of money. Child support, divorce attorney. No matter how sweet he acts, please don't be alone with him at all. Be very aware of your surroundings. The book, Why Did He Do That? By Lundy Buncroft is amazing in these situations. You can probably find a free PDF online. That book saved my life and my sanity when I was afraid my ex-husband was going to kill me. And now, onto the final update. I just want to say a huge thank you to this community for helping me through a challenging time. Your comments and messages have been such a comfort, and I'm so touched by the kindness of internet strangers. At the suggestion of the social worker, I reported his journal to the local police, and that was, unsurprisingly, a 1 out of 10 experience. The officer I spoke to chided me for reading his journal, spoke about his reasonable expectation of privacy, and basically threatened to tell my husband that I had reported him. I had to firmly advocate for myself and stress that I was afraid for my life. It was an awful conversation, but now there is at least a record which includes photos of the journal. The family lawyer that I spoke with advised me to file a protection order right away. The order would ban him from all contact with me and our child, bar him from our residence, my workplace, and any other places that I request. He would then have to prove to a judge that he is a fit parent to be able to see his daughter again, and then we would go to mediation to try and agree on what visitation would look like. Another wrench in this situation is that we own a business together. I have an appointment with another lawyer this week to discuss what my options are there. The business was my idea. I'm confident I can run it without him, and I want to, but he's put a lot of time into it, and it's the main source of income for both of us right now. It's a good moneymaker, and I'm worried he'd fight me tooth and nail on this. We take turns going in, so I went as usual on Saturday, with a friend and a baseball bat. I continued my act of intending to reconcile, doing video calls with the baby, etc. While I was at our workplace, I found another journal. Page after page, love letters to this other woman going back months. The progression from, "I liked seeing you at the grocery store," to, "I drove past your house today," was wild. He writes about how deeply in love he is with her, can't wait to marry her, etc. He wrote about every interaction he has ever had with her, and the poor woman seems completely innocent and oblivious. Even what he perceived as flirting seems like basic politeness. He mentions a few other times that he wants me to die. The most recent entry was from the day before. He writes to her that he thinks that I might be breaking up with him, but that's fine because he never liked me that much anyway. If he's upset about anything, it's just about losing the house and how the breakup will be perceived by our friends and community. I'm curious if people think I should warn the other woman. It's my instinct not to, at least not before the ink dries in our impending paperwork. I was already concerned about how he might react to being served with a protection order, most worried that he might try to sabotage our business or trash the house. Given how preoccupied he seems to be with his public image, I made a plan to confront him about the journals and use the protection order as leverage. Here's how it went down. I left the journal and my baby with my friend and went to our house with 2 trusted male friends and the baseball bat. They waited on our porch. I told my husband that if they heard anything louder than a speaking voice, they would come in with the bat. I told him I had to tell him something that he wouldn't like to hear, and he needed to know that I had already taken steps to protect myself. I told him I read the journals, specifically what he said about wanting me to die, and thinking every day about killing me. I said I had taken photos, that they are backed up, and a trusted source also has copies, that I also have the original copy of the journal full of love letters. I wondered until this moment if he had intended for me to find them, but he was obviously blindsided. He tried to say that it was just venting, but I told him that I would not be taking any chances or entertaining anything he has to say about it, that after reading what I read, I will never trust him or feel safe around him ever again. I told him that no one that knows him knows about this yet. The men on the porch just know that I'm breaking up with him and need support. This was true, aside from the friend that I called to stay with and the other friend that I sent the photos to, who lives on the other side of the country. I said I'm willing to protect his reputation here if he cooperates with me. I told him that I don't even have to ruin his chances with the other woman, but I can. I said that he can either do what I need to feel safe, or I can have that safety court-ordered. He asked what I wanted, and I said that I wanted him to give up the business. We'll sort out the details after I speak to the other lawyer, but for now, I want his keys, and I'll be changing the passwords on everything. He didn't put up any kind of fight. He didn't want to hear anything about what it would look like to go through the courts. He didn't ask about our baby. He just calmly got up and got the keys and asked if I wanted anything else. I told him that any communication with me should be about separation logistics only, like arranging a time for me to collect the rest of my things. Since then, he has been blowing up my phone, saying I know his heart, let's walk back from the edge, let's talk to a therapist, he's sorry his words hurt me, etc. Each time, I just tell him he's crossing my boundaries, and he backs off. He apparently told his mum and sister everything, and they're supporting him in getting help. He's been cooperative so far. He's interviewing for a new job, seeing a therapist, and updating me on his movements, though I didn't ask for this. I've temporarily moved in with my parents. My commute to work is longer, but I have help with baby and home-cooked dinners, starting to settle into new routines, doing so much therapy and yoga. I inherited a small cabin before my husband and I met. It is currently being renovated, and the original plan was to move in there with my husband and baby when it's done. The cabin is actually in my mother's name because she's never trusted my husband, correct, and wanted me to shield it from him in case of a divorce. Thank you, Mom. So I will have a permanent home for me and my baby very soon. The dust still needs to settle, and it could get worse before it gets better, but I'm optimistic at this point. I'm confident that I'm going to come out the other side of this as a badass single mum with an incredible child, a thriving business, and an adorable little home. Honestly, the thought of having all those things on my own without my husband is so freeing. I've got a great village supporting me. Thank you all so much for being a part of it. In the comments, Darth Baker says, I am so thankful to read this. I've been thinking about you the last 2 days. So happy that you advocated for yourself, took the correct measures, and didn't accept anything less than what you deserve in this life. The road ahead isn't ever as long as we think it is, and it's good that you left and are able to heal and move forward. OP says, thanks for keeping me in your thoughts. He doesn't care about his child? OP says, this is what's most shocking to me. He was always such an attentive father, but he's not fighting for her at all. Yeah, no, says, he's already not putting up a fight, and that itself is a huge relief. If you still let the lady know, it could make him snap and hurt her and the baby. OP has to think about her kid's safety and try not to be a target. And OP says, this is exactly where my head is at. I don't know this woman, so I can't trust her not to tell her friends, and I don't want it to get back to him. Still Likes Turtles says, OP's lawyer or social worker should handle that. OP should share it with both. Either can take appropriate action to inform the other woman. No need for OP's life to be messier or give the soon-to-be ex anything to work with. And OP says, lawyer agreed with me that it's best not to talk to the other woman for now. The police know. It would make a wonderful book someday. Maybe you can turn this horrible event into a stream of income for you and your baby somehow to help with your new life. It takes a week just to make the appointments sometimes. Lawyers, therapists, but protection orders can come quickly. Please tell us this is real, that you didn't lie to us. And OP says, it is all unfortunately real. For anyone else in a similar situation that might be reading this, in my area, there is a legal center that holds space for emergency appointments every day at 2 p.m. Protection orders are processed the same day that they are filed. That's my understanding. I didn't actually file one yet. As far as a therapist, I have one that I see regularly, so I already had an appointment on the books. After speaking with me, my therapist opened up an additional weekend appointment because I obviously needed the extra support. I'd love to know exactly why OP's mother didn't trust the husband. What did she see in him? My mum once told me, regarding my now ex-husband but then fiancé, that fiancé seems like the kind of guy that would just up and murder his family one night, and everyone would say, holy shit, we never saw that coming. It was just a specific and jarring comment. My ex-husband honestly seemed so sweet and innocent. When things started going to shit, he started stalking me, physically intimidating me, cornering me, and towering over me. Told me he'll ensure that I am destitute when this is all done. He literally flipped to a different guy. And I think my mum saw something that I didn't. This is how I felt about a stalker that I had. We were talking about abortion when we were seeing each other because he saw a comment of mine on Facebook and started disagreeing very hard on the subject. I don't remember the exact words he used, but he basically told me that he wouldn't allow me to abort his baby if I were to get pregnant. That really freaked me out. Tried to reason with him face to face, hoping that I was misunderstanding him. But nope. So after that talk, I tried to slowly back away from him, since he knew that I didn't want a relationship, but since he became more and more annoying by being devil's advocate, I unfriended him. And then the harassing and threatening started. For 2 years, this man called me and messaged me, only to find out that he was doing it at the same time to other women. One of them even managed to file a complaint against him, and now he cannot come close to her, and also got a record for harassment. Always, always trust your gut. I had a boyfriend sleep over when I lived at my mum's, and she didn't sleep all night. He was in my bed, I was on the couch, and she was strict about sharing. It was her first time meeting him. I commented that I couldn't understand why she had an issue when she'd never had an issue sleeping when I'd had other boyfriends sleep over on the couch. It turned out that he was emotionally abusive, and she sensed that something wasn't right about him at first meeting. Sometimes people outside the relationship pick up a feeling, a vibe, an off comment that those who are in the relationship can't see until later on. Quote, "The officer that I spoke to chided me for reading his journal, spoke about his reasonable expectation of privacy, and basically threatened to tell my husband I had reported him. I am utterly not surprised by this reaction. There are multiple cases of women being killed because police will not believe them, dismiss their concerns, and in a few horrific cases, give their new contact details to their abusive ex, after which he shows up and murders her. 28% of police officers commit domestic violence by self-report. The famous 40% stat includes spouses of officers as well. As it is self-report, the number is likely much higher. Yup. It's horrific, and they get away with it all the time, as well as enabling other domestic abusers. It is literally ingrained culture for them. Yeah, it's very much ingrained culture here in Australia too. The domestic violence, assault, and the spousal murder rate is insane here in Australia. I've lived experience here that we cannot trust the cops because so many times, women are just murdered and the same thing happens, where the police don't care that protection orders are violated. They will be called over and over and over by these people saying, "He's at my house, he's trying to kill me, he is going to kill me," and the police are like, "You're just being dramatic," and then they end up murdered. It is a sick and twisted world we live in, and I hope it changes one day, but I don't know how. Our next post is by user ImmediateWay2944, titled, "Am I the asshole for going fishing the day my ex was giving birth? I, male 29, ended a relationship with this woman, Maria, female 27, about 1.5 years ago. Our relationship was largely casual, and I made it abundantly clear to Maria that I didn't want a serious long-term relationship. Maria agreed, since we had such wildly different values and beliefs, but after being together for about 11 months, she confessed that she wanted a serious relationship with the prospect of getting married. I declined, as I thought, and still think, that we are way too different to start something like that. We continued our relationship for a few more months when Maria brought up marriage and starting a family again. She started saying things like how her family and friends liked me as well, and how we'd be a great fit. I decided to break things off with Maria. I felt like we both wanted different things, and it was better if we went our separate ways. Maria was devastated by our breakup and begged me to remain in contact, so I did. We kept a decently close friendship for the past 1.5 years. Since then, Maria's life has been through a downward spiral. She hasn't gotten into any serious relationships. She's been in many, but they've only lasted 2 months at most, and most of the guys were not very good. This lifestyle has caused a lot of friction with her parents, and she tells me she no longer speaks with them because of it. Maria also failed out of a graduate school and has struggled to find work before finally landing a job that she hates a few months ago. One of the guys Maria was with got her pregnant at some point, and she was scheduled to give birth at some point last week. Leading up to the birth, Maria started calling me a lot, and she seemed very apprehensive. She told me that she was terrified of becoming a mum. I tried to reassure her that she'd make a great mum, visited her several times in the past few months, and helped her out whenever I could. Maria ended up giving birth last week, on the day that I was going fishing with some of my old friends that I hadn't seen in a while. When I found out about the birth the following day from one of Maria's friends, I called her and congratulated her. Maria sounded exhausted, but was happy that I called. Later that week, I started getting a lot of messages from Maria's friends telling me how I should have been there since Maria was so afraid, as none of her family showed up and she was hoping that I would come. One of her friends, Katie, female 28, was particularly angry. She said that I needed to be more supportive of Maria since she felt alone and I was abusing the trust that Maria had in me. Honestly, I get helping out and being there for friends, but I feel like it wasn't exactly my responsibility. Also, she had two of her other friends, Katie and another girl, with her on the day of the birth, so I don't know what I could have added. Am I the asshole? For more context, for those wondering, the father is back in Austria, and there's like a 60% chance that he doesn't even know about the kid. All of Maria's friends know that he's the dad, but they just refer to him as some asshole. While I do want to maintain a cordial relationship with Maria, I have no interest in raising her child. Even more context, for those wondering, I knew the baby was supposed to be born last week. He was scheduled for Saturday, but the little guy decided that he wanted to come earlier, so was born on Wednesday. I left town Tuesday night and planned on coming back on Friday. The baby was born on Wednesday, and I only found out on Thursday. I called Maria afterwards and congratulated her. I didn't make any promises about being there for the kid's birth. In the comments, Joss Carruth says, "Not the asshole. Guarantee that she had this fantasy where you bonded with the kid and came back to her. It's time to walk away." 100%. OP needed to nix this relationship long ago. If she hasn't already, she's developing some unhealthy attachment, and OP is only enabling the delusion. Agree. Personal opinion. When it's apparent the other person isn't able to let go, and you've definitely let go, you have an obligation to cut it off completely for their sake. You may not be stringing them along, but they're stringing themselves along. I definitely think the friends are encouraging this. Everybody is expecting OP to step up here. Who expects a man who is not related to be in delivery? She's going to want support with so much. When will it end? When he marries her and adopts the kid. To Maria's friends, they want to see Maria be the magnet that pulls OP back for the sake of their dopamine levels. Dude, she's looking for a daddy. I would back away from the friendship, not the asshole. I was about to type this. Next, she'll be asking you to do fatherly things with her kid because the kid has no father figure and pressuring you to get together. I would cut the friendship now. Not the asshole. Not your baby, not your business. Poor Maria, but this is not your problem. Block her overbearing friends. Meh, Maria made choices here that affected her relationships with the flings and her family and keeping a baby by herself, or having unprotected sex with strange men in the first place. I don't think there's any poor Maria here. Yeah, I'm kind of on board with all of those guys there. Maria kind of did this to herself and that's a choice that she made. But you made it very obvious from the start that you weren't looking for a relationship with her, and I respect that. You stood your ground and held those boundaries strong. Having such conflicting views is absolutely a deal breaker, and why would you want to start a relationship with someone like that if you can't even find common ground? It's not your fault that Maria's life has spiraled out of control and has come to this point, and it's not your fault for missing the birth because you never made any promises. I think she's the one being weird and delusional here, and yeah, walk away, not the asshole. And now, on to the update. Before I proceed with my update, I'd like to clarify a few points that have been raised. Many people have been wondering about my statement regarding Maria's values and beliefs not aligning with mine. By this, I meant that Maria and I differ on various topics such as religion, finances, and culture. While I do respect Maria and enjoy my time with her, for a long-time relationship involving marriage and children, I'd prefer someone who shares more similarities to me. My own family has also felt that Maria and I weren't a good match in the long run, though they did acknowledge her as a nice girl. Firstly, Maria and I have very different opinions on religion. I don't want to get too bogged down in the details, but I feel like this was a major obstacle to us forming a lasting relationship, especially considering how we both wanted children eventually. Second, we both come from different places financially. Maria is in a significant amount of debt, both student loans and credit card debt, And while I don't judge being in debt, I do think Maria could be more careful with her finances. I admit that I have more of a privileged perspective than her, so I might not fully understand her financial struggles. Nonetheless, during our time together, I felt that she would typically spend more than she should. And lastly, Maria and I have different cultural backgrounds. Though we are both American, we come from different walks of life, which is a point of contention for my family, especially my older sister, female 36, and sometimes for even myself during certain points in our relationship. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm fairly certain Maria still has feelings for me. Whenever we talk privately, she loves to reminisce about our time together and usually refers to it as the happiest time of her life. Not to mention, if I mention to her a date that I've been on, I can tell that it hurts her, but she tries to hide it. Moving on to the update. I spoke with my older brother Brad, male 32, over the phone since posting, and he said that he thinks that it's time Maria and I completely part ways. Our differences were already big, and now with her having a child, it's completely unrealistic for anything to ever work out between us. Brad believes that by maintaining contact, I'm only giving Maria false hope of us getting back together. He also thinks that given how Maria's friends reacted to my absence, it's clear they are all hoping that we get back together. I hoped I'd be able to remain friends with Maria, but after hearing my brother and doing some self-reflection, I realized that I couldn't do so in good faith. I don't plan on suddenly cutting contact since Maria just had a baby and all, but I will be winding down contact in the coming weeks and months. However, for the next month or so, I will mostly act like I normally do since it is a very difficult time for her, and her social circle is already small. On Monday evening, I got a call from Maria. We chatted for a bit, and she mentioned how she'd like me and some of our friends to come and meet the baby in a few weeks when he gets bigger and stronger. I did agree to this, and we'll all be getting together at her place in about a month to see the little guy. She also shared some photos of him with me, and again mentioned her nervousness about raising him alone. When I asked about the father, she admitted she hadn't spoken to him in a while, which is frustrating. Aside from this, there isn't much else to report. I wish Maria all the best and hope she finds her way through parenthood. In the comments, LittleBitFunny21 says, "Please just cut contact." Quote, "I did agree to this, and we'll all be getting together at her place in about a month to see the little guy. This is not cutting contact. This is laying the groundwork for her to use as leverage to say that the baby loves you and misses you and needs to have you in his life. Just block her and be done with it." My brother told me to do the sensible thing and cut contact, which I will do. Just let me become even slightly more involved with her kid than I currently am, and go spend time with her and her friends who want me to get back with her in person first. That absolutely can't go wrong. So it was a huge mistake to go, and I wish someone had told me not to. I was ambushed by her friends who demanded that I get back with her, and just to placate them, I agreed. I wish someone could have warned me. OP in their next update. For Crying Out Meow says, "Are you perchance flat and rectangular with welcome written across your face? Because you're acting like her doormat. Block her and move on with your life." Dude is looking for the right moment to give the bad news goodbye, and it will never come. He's just going to have to take the hit and be the villain. She's managed to alienate her family in her last breakup spiral that lasted several years, and there is no telling what will happen when he tells her for a third and final time that he is not her dream guy. Poor kid. Hopefully she pulls herself together enough to be a decent parent. The right moment was when he first broke up with her, which he probably should have done the first time she discussed getting serious instead of stringing her along. I don't understand this guy at all. He made it abundantly clear that he has zero desire for any long-term or meaningful relationship with this girl, yet he keeps participating in her life. I get not wanting to be an asshole to someone, but in a way, you're being a bigger asshole by staying around and being at her every beck and call. I agree with his brother. He is without question giving Maria false hope that he may come back around one day. He needs to go no contact yesterday. He likes that she's still into him. That's the impression that I get too. I can't prove that though, so I just didn't want to mention it. But yeah, It seems to me like even though he doesn't want anything long-term with her, he has no issue keeping her on the back burner in case he ever needs it. Again, I can't prove that though and could be wrong, so I hesitated to say it, lol. Nah, you're absolutely right. OP wants to have a string attached to her for his own personal gratification. I read, kept decently close for the past 1.5 years, as him and her still having sex while she was trying to see other people. Who knows? The friends are upset for a reason. It seems OP may be omitting some facts to save face in the post. My dad, 55 male, won't walk me down the aisle, 30 female, and I want to know if I should uninvite him from the wedding. So I'm getting married in about a month to my best friend, 35 male. I did not grow up knowing my dad very well, as him and my mum divorced when I was an infant. He remarried and had several kids with his new wife, who hates my very existence. There was a lot of hurtful things done when I was growing up, like not being allowed in her house when I visited, that led me to be estranged from my father. He never really made much of an effort, but after I was 18, I completely cut him off for my mental health and stopped answering the few calls that he attempted. He tried to get into contact every once in a while over the years, but I honestly just ignored him. I was hurt and angry. About a year ago, I got back into contact with some extended family on his side and have been forging a good bond with all of them. I invited them all to our wedding and they have been amazing. Eventually, I started speaking with my dad as well back around Christmas, and it was tense at first, but I decided to just give him a chance. We have slowly been getting a semblance of a relationship back, and I saw him in person with my fiancé a couple of months ago. His wife is not pleased at all, and apparently their kids, my half-siblings, all adults, are also upset about it. I think there were threats of divorce, but my dad still decided to go to my wedding. After a ton of thought, I asked my dad if he wanted to walk me down the aisle, as I've been hopeful for a better relationship, but he turned me down. I wouldn't be as upset if he gave me a generic excuse, but he told me that his wife and other daughter requested that he does not walk me down the aisle, as that is reserved for his other daughter, and not me. I am super hurt, and not even sure what to reply with. He offered to stand at the front and give me away instead, but that isn't what I want. My fiancé thinks that we should uninvite him and move on, but I'm not sure if that's the best course of action. He's coming from out of state with the rest of his family, so he already bought a plane ticket and hotel room. Part of me thinks to just politely turn him down, have him as a regular guest, and then just stop talking to him again after the wedding. My mum isn't coming to my wedding because she lives really far away, so I don't really have any other immediate family coming. I'm not sure what the best course of action is, and the wedding is getting super close, so I have to make a decision soon. Edits. Wow, this post is blown up. Thank you all so much for the advice and comforting words. To answer some common questions that I'm seeing, no, his wife and my half-siblings are not attending the wedding. I invited them, but they won't even meet me, let alone go to the wedding. He has 2 sons and a daughter with his new wife, who are all in their 20s. I'm not sure if my dad cheated on my mum with my stepmom, but my mum, through all her faults, never actually said a bad word about him. He did marry my stepmom by the time that I was 2 years old though, so there wasn't much time in between marriages. They are also very Christian in the worst way, as in they don't really follow what they claim to believe. My mum cannot fly as she has panic attacks. She also is actually a worse parent than my dad in a lot of ways, believe it or not. I have no male relatives to walk me down the aisle. I also never wanted him to give me away, as I think that's dumb. I just wanted my dad to act like my dad for one moment. My fiancé and I have decided to walk down the aisle together as one of you suggested, so that part is settled. I'll update everyone once I decide what to do and if there is any response. In the comments, I would not want a relationship with a man who saves walking down the aisle for his important daughter. What would you want that at your wedding for? He doesn't view you as his daughter. He isn't a father. He is just a sperm donor. Yeah, man. Don't let that stuff get you down. This is a big event, and adopted family, in my honest opinion, beats blood more often than not. This is what I'm thinking. You don't need anyone to walk you down the aisle or give you away, because you are your own woman and you've got yourself there. You chose him, and those outdated policies don't apply. You don't have to uninvite him. Let him endure the shame that he will feel as a regular guest there, and realize you don't want nor need him to perform in any capacity. But he can certainly bear witness to your triumph. There is nothing quite so powerful as the realization that you are in a place of shame when you're supposed to be in a place of honor. And if his family has a good relationship with you, they are going to do all the work for you. Shame is a useful tool for people to realize they messed up. Anyway, congratulations on your upcoming ceremony. If nothing else, random internet stranger is super happy for you and your soon-to-be husband. Best of luck to you both. I am so very sorry that you grew up without a father, and I'm equally sorry that you put yourself in such a vulnerable state and he shot you down. Really, what you decide to do about rescinding the invitation is entirely your decision. Is there a male figure on his side of the family who's coming to the wedding and could take his place? Perhaps his brother or father, or maybe a male figure on your fiancé's side of the family. Whatever the outcome, I wish a beautiful day for you. You are creating a whole new family for yourself by joining your fiancé's family. All the best of luck to you. I was going to suggest your future father-in-law walk you down if you were set on somebody having that role. I don't know what kind of relationship you have with your future father-in-law, but it could be a good bonding moment for you two. You say that you have a relationship with other members of his side of the family? Tell them ahead of time that he's doing this. Not in a, oh, poor me way, but in a, just wanted you to know that I'm not rejecting this side of the family. Dad's wife thinks that he can only walk one daughter down the aisle ever, and it has to be her daughter, not me. Then just invite him as a guest, since you want to have a birth parent attend. I guarantee that someone in your family is going to make things very awkward for him/them, and that's okay. Seriously, if I heard this about a brother, I would be chewing him out so fast his head would spin. An uncle, well, I'd probably tell my mum, and then chew out my cousin. And now, onto the update. Hello everyone. I just wanted to start by saying thank you so much for your kind words and advice on my original post. It made me feel so much better. We had an amazing wedding and honeymoon. Everything went really well. My husband wants to thank everyone who said some form of listen to your fiancé. I'll start with what happened right after my post. I did uninvite my dad from my wedding. The whole interaction was too hurtful to let go of. Before telling him I was uninviting him, I spoke to my aunt/his sister, Sandy, 50s female, who was furious at her brother for what he said to me. She has been such a great support of me and my husband, which has been amazing, honestly. After I sent my dad an email detailing how awful he had been and that he was uninvited, Sandy called him and yelled at him for being an asshole. He replied to my email with a bunch of nonsense deflection about how he has to make sure both sides are happy, but apparently told Sandy, not me, that he was sorry and that it was a miscommunication. He claims to Sandy that he was only trying to negotiate with me, and that he would have walked me down the aisle if that was what I really wanted. I highly doubt that. My mother-in-law, who was extremely conservative and religious, actually said my dad needed to grow some balls, which shocked literally everyone. I replied to him that I stood firm on my decision to uninvite and to not contact me again until after the wedding, but that if he did contact me at all, it better be with the understanding that he needs to be present in my life the same way that he is with his other kids, otherwise to not reach out again. Around this time, right before the wedding, I called my mum and asked her about what really happened with her and my dad when I was a baby, because she never talked about it with me growing up. Unlike my dad and stepmom, my mum never once said anything bad about my dad to me. She was always neutral or positive about him, which I have since thanked her for, as it let me come to my own conclusions about what a deadbeat he is. My mum and I had a good cry about everything, and she let me know how abusive and awful my dad was to her when I was a baby after they split up. I also found out that he married his new wife when I was less than a year old, which is insane considering that my parents were still 100% together the day that I was born. Sandy swears up and down that she introduced my dad and stepmom to each other after my parents split, as they, stepmom and Sandy, were classmates in college. I don't really care either way at this point. It's just interesting to see how no one has a clear idea of what happened. My thought is that they were cheating and then they used Sandy to introduce them to cover up their behavior. Keep in mind, they are all very Christian, even though they clearly don't follow any of their religious teachings. I didn't hear anything from my dad during the wedding, and Sandy and her family still came. We all had a blast, and everyone was so happy for us. The pictures turned out great, and there isn't anyone in them that I wish could be photoshopped out. So I definitely knew that uninviting my dad ended up being the best decision that we could make. I talked to Sandy about my dad over the holidays, and she said that him and his wife/kids were refusing to go to any family dinners or parties because they're upset that everyone else talks to me. I have been in regular contact with Sandy, my Uncle Jerry, and all of their kids, which makes my stepmom feel betrayed. Sandy is pissed at her because they used to be friends, but never understood what her issue was with me. I found out my stepmom treated me like crap the second she had her first kid when I was still a toddler, which probably doesn't surprise anyone. I didn't hear from my dad all through December, but finally, in late January, I got a random email from him. He sent a long email blaming me for him not being in my life, telling me his wife and kids are more important, but that we need to still be in each other's lives. It was the most BS email that he had sent me so far, and completely disregarded my wishes back in October when I told him to not contact me unless he was going to treat me like his actual child. I ended up not responding and just blocking his email. I also told Sandy to not share any of the pictures or videos from the wedding with him and to not talk about me with him. I think this will be the end of the relationship with him, since he is clearly incapable of being a parent to me. I feel a lot more at peace with everything that happened, and I'm completely okay with how it all turned out. One commenter in my original post said something along the lines of not knowing if my dad would have been a bad parent since he wasn't around, and that really has stuck with me. Thinking about it now, he probably would have been even worse had he actually been in my life. Unfortunately, both of my parents are emotionally stunted, but I made a good use of the life that was handed to me and will hopefully break this cycle with my own kids one day. I didn't mention in my last post that my husband and I are going to be moving to the same state as my family in the next year. I was worried at first, being closer to my dad, but honestly, he and his bitter wife and kids can do whatever they want. I'm just going to live my life how I want to. We were planning on moving to this state before I ever got back in contact with my family, so we will continue to do what is best for us. Anyways, thank you again, kind Redditors. You really helped me not feel sad or upset for my wedding day. In the comments, Lady Ice says, "I'm so glad that you had a wonderful wedding. I wish you and your hubby the best in the future. Live the best of your life with hope, faith, and love. Best revenge you can have. P.S. Something to think about. Stepmom may have told your step-siblings that daddy had an affair, and that may be why they hate you. Good riddance. You don't need people like that in your life. They're probably mad that you grew up well. Live your life to the fullest." One more thing to note. If you ever get a chance to speak with your siblings from your stepmonster's marriage, ask them their perspective on this. Ask them what you personally ever did to them and their mother that made them hate you so much that they would be hurt if your father walked you down the aisle or had a healthy relationship. Not being willing to walk your daughter down the aisle because your other daughter is jealous, blaming your child for the problems in the relationship and you not being there for her entire life? She didn't lose her father because you can't lose something that you never had. Dude couldn't grow a spine for a single day. His wife is married to him with kids and is so insecure that he had a past, she punishes the child. Probably even poisons her own kids against the ex-family. They deserve each other, and I hope they have a long life of wedded misery. I disagree. The dad does have a spine. He's very immovable of his will, and his will is to prioritize his new family. He blames them for his choices, but he's the one making them. Now, I know someone truly spineless in my extended family. He's the kind of person who agrees with the last person he spoke to before changing his mind on his own later on, and then being influenced again. So even if he commits to something, you never really know if he'll follow through. and then he blames everyone else for the choices that he ends up making. Unfortunately, you're right. There is no spineless man, just a massive, massive asshole. Grand Joe says, I absolutely adore that the aunt is driving her sister-in-law and former friend crazy by still having a relationship with OP. Just living a happy life without them drives people like that insane. No, you have to cut her off because we are cut off. My dad still randomly sends me emails claiming that his sister is evil and will totally steal from me. She's the opposite of evil, keeps trying to overpay me for running her errands, shoves a cold drink and home-cooked food at me whenever I show up with her shopping, always throwing gifts at me. Last time was a bunch of kitchen towels that she made specifically for me, about the size of a paper towel and with a little loop so it's easy to hang dry. 41 Flavors and Then Some says, how to be a piece of shit. Forsake your child, especially for a new partner, and then actively mistreat your partner's child or children from a previous relationship. The dad and step monster are evil and awful. I hope they have many years of making each other absolutely miserable. People like that really make me hope that there is a Christian heaven and hell so I can see them down there with me, a proper sinner. I'm genuinely curious what could be wrong with the mum that she's worse than all of this. She mentioned emotional immaturity, so that means that OP was responsible for helping her mum with the mum's emotions and was basically neglected by her mum. It's a weird sort of neglect because it's all emotional, which isn't recognized as abuse, but it sure messes kids up. Our next post is by user No Meat Please, titled, My 27 female, boyfriend 30 male, of 9 months, knows I'm a vegetarian and put meat in my food without my permission. The guy I'm dating is sort of a good old boy. Hell, I live in an area where most of the guys would probably describe themselves with that phrase. I'm a vegetarian and have been since I tried to kill a chicken when I was 15 and couldn't go through with it. I don't mind that other people eat meat, but on a moral level, it is not okay for me. I'm not the vegetarian police, but I also get tired of having to explain to people around here that I do get enough protein. I'm small-framed and around 118 pounds, and that I'm not eating the vegetables they cooked in lard. My boyfriend teases me about being a vegetarian, but behind closed doors, he is, or was, actually really accommodating about it. He cooks me vegetarian food and says eating less meat has helped him take off a couple of pounds. He had me and some friends over the other night. He made pork chops for them and a big salad for me. While I was eating my salad, I kept thinking that something was off. The dressing was so oily and had a really strong flavor. He always makes his own dressing, so I asked him what he used. We had all been drinking, and at this point, his 2 friends start cracking up. I'm sort of clueless, so I'm waiting for him to answer. He tells me that he mixed in lard for extra flavor, and he didn't think that I would notice. At this point, I just freeze mid-chew. When he sees my reaction, he starts to tell me that it's not a big deal. It's just a joke. Don't get upset, etc. I calmly spit the food into my napkin, place the plate down, and then get up to leave. Everyone's gotten quiet at this point. His friends start apologizing, saying it was their idea, and my boyfriend starts telling me not to go. F that. I don't say a word and just walk home. I know that vegetarians get a bad rap, but believe me when I say that I am not one of those people. I work in a rural community involving agriculture. I would never survive out here if I was. I pack my own lunches for conventions, and I never make a big deal out of it. But having someone that I care about essentially trick me into eating meat without my permission is crossing a huge line for me. I haven't spoken, called or texted to him for 3 days now. He's apologized and sent flowers, but in one of the texts, he told me that I was overreacting, which, for me, was the deal breaker. My parents really like him, and when I told them what happened, my dad got upset and told me that I'm making too big of a deal out of something silly. He says I'm letting my ridiculous eating habits dictate my life. Reddit, I'm really hurt. I feel like tricking me into eating lard was really cruel, but everyone's attitude here is that I need to get a sense of humor. I'm out of town at a conference, and I'm going to have to discuss this with him when I get back. Am I just being too sensitive? In the comments, Losang Dechen says, "Ew, who puts lard in salad dressing?" And OP replies, "Whoops. After reading through these comments, I believe that it was bacon grease. Apparently I should brush up on this as well, and it's most definitely a southern thing." But anyway, OP, I must ask, how do you go from literally about to kill an animal, why is another curiosity of mine, to not eating meat at all? And OP replies, "One of my best friend's grandfathers had a farm and was a very firm believer in being able to kill what you eat. He felt Americans were becoming too removed from their food. I'm sure he knew that I wouldn't be able to do it. I was a real softie of a kid when it came to all the livestock. We talked about why I couldn't do it, and I cried, but it wasn't too traumatic. He let me buy the chicken off of him too." OP on her vegetarianism says, "Lol, I just finished responding to a comment in a very similar, although not as well put, fashion as this. I very much respect and understand where you're coming from. I also went the ethical vegan route and had a hard time with it. I lost a lot of weight and muscle tone. The compromise, splitting hairs, was to introduce eggs back in, but from selective sources. It made a world of difference in how I felt. Do I still feel a tinge of guilt about it? Sometimes, but I accept it. Also, being vegan in the South is a damn nightmare. It's hard enough talking with people about beef and chicken stock." Mr. Con says, "You'll be reminded of this incident every time he prepares food for you." Holy shit, I didn't even think of that. Wow, I don't think I could ever trust my significant other again in the kitchen. It's not the fact that you're a vegetarian. The problem is that he went behind your back to do something that he knew would upset you. You were not overreacting. He violated your trust big time. I would be pissed too. This is such good advice. Being a vegetarian is actually irrelevant. Her partner deliberately took actions which assault her fundamental principles. That is not a laughing matter. He not only doesn't share her basic ethical values, but is openly hostile towards them. That is exponentially worse. Yup, and it's not like salad dressing would even taste good with lard in it. Ew. Literally the only reason to do it was to trick her into eating meat. I've been vegan for many years. There is literally a way to go without meat and making things that taste cheesy, sometimes almost meaty. There is indeed no reason at all to use lard in a salad dressing. There is no point, and it's not like it's even supposed to be in it to begin with. This guy is an effing joke. I'm not a vegetarian, but I recall when I was a kid and my grandfather kept rabbits. We loved going there so we could play with them. One lunch, my twin brother and I were eating spaghetti and chicken, and they asked us how it was. You can guess the rest. How they laughed and how my twin and I bawled. Your boyfriend intentionally set you up to be a joke to his friends. That would offend me almost as much as the meat feeding. If he doesn't get it, then ask how he would feel if you cut up someone's pet dog and hid it in a sausage. Then again, why waste your time? If you see a future with him, then give him a second chance, but if you're on the fence, roller skate away. Back up to the post, we have an edit. Damn, I did not believe that I would come home to all this feedback. Thank you guys so much for making me feel like less of a crazy. My dad always thought that my vegetarianism was a phase that I would grow out of, but I think he and I are going to have a talk when I get back home. As for the boyfriend, we are also going to have a talk. He's made some other comments that I've let slide, about cyclists in particular, so it's time for me to lay it out there. Another edit, I probably should have mentioned this in the original. I was leaving the following evening for a conference, so I did send him a text when I woke up that I was angry and didn't want to talk until I got back. And now, onto the updates. Well, we had our come to Jesus talk when I got back about what happened. I explained to him how tired I was about defending being a vegetarian to people. It feels like my social identity. Like if someone was trying to describe me to a coworker, they'd say, you know, the vegetarian girl. And I really dislike that because I never bring it up. And when I say defend, I mean you get questions from all over. People seriously take you to task. Shit, one of the commenters on my last thread compared my actions to letting a child starve in a third world country. I've been asked multiple times if swallowing semen is vegetarian, or had some armchair philosopher point out the inconsistencies in my morals. Well, if it's for ethical reasons, you should abstain from all animal products. And as I've gotten older, my defiance flag just isn't flying as high anymore. I don't want to sit down to every lunch with coworkers and hear the bad hunter joke, or have the rude secretary tell me that she just read vegetarianism is usually a cover for an eating disorder. So yeah, I obviously have a chip on my shoulder about all of this. Everything I said above, I laid out to my boyfriend. All of it. He explained that he didn't think the joke would be a big deal because something similar happened at a potluck. One of my friends made a pasta side and used chicken stock. She didn't think about it and I couldn't tell. When she realized later on, I shrugged and told her, sometimes it happens. No reason to be angry with an honest mistake. I was pretty exacerbated by his comparison and explained the difference using all of the examples that you guys raised. Hit very heavy on the respect subject. We argued about this for a bit, and at one point he said, I basically became a vegetarian for you. I bristled up over this comment because I've never asked that of him or anyone that I've ever dated. I also pointed out that he was nowhere near a vegetarian, which was admittedly sort of petty. This went back and forth for a while. Finally, I just threw my hands up and asked why this was such a big deal. Why couldn't we sit down and talk about boundaries and move forward? He said he was worried about the future. He wants marriage, kids, and a stay-at-home mum. His mum told him that I need to eat meat during the pregnancy for the baby to develop properly, and that the kids need to eat meat to grow up big and strong. I just stared at him, mouth open, completely blanked out. He said that he loved me, but that it was time for me to grow up and compromise. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. This was the first time he'd said he loved me, but he was also talking about a future that I didn't remember signing up for. I'm pretty lukewarm on kids, and I definitely have no interest in being a stay-at-home mum. And compromise? What the hell? You can be vegetarian while pregnant and have a perfectly healthy child. I think I was just overwhelmed. I said something along the lines of, I think you have the wrong girl, and went home pretty defeated. The next night I went to talk to my dad about what he said. Initially he claimed he was worried for my health and brought up my bad run with veganism, which was a fair point, but after some poking and prodding, he finally just said, I'm just worried that you're never going to find someone. Sigh. Deep down, I think I knew that was his main concern. All the rest of my siblings are married and have children, so I'm already the odd man out. Add on to that the liberalism, the college degree, atheism, veggie. I told him that boyfriend and I broke up and burst immediately into tears. He gave me a big hug and told me that he supported and loved me, but he wanted to be able to lie on his deathbed and know that I would have someone to take care of me. I went home and stared at a wall for 3 hours. I'm okay, but still sorting all my feelings out. I had a heavy night of whiskey drinking, a long morning of puking, and then I brought some anti-aging cream. My friends are taking me on a trip next week, which I'm really looking forward to. That's about it. In the comments, a deleted user says, so in high school, I dated a girl that was vegetarian. Had no idea, so when I asked her out to dinner for our first date, that is when she told me. I was pretty much like, okay, cool. Are there places that suit your diet better than others? Will it bother you if I order a steak or a burger? It was a quick talk. Didn't bother her that I wanted to eat meat, and we found a place that she liked that would suit the both of us. The bottom line? I was 16. Even at 16, I respected her decision to eat how she wanted and never would have even imagined trying to sneak something in that she wouldn't normally eat. There's someone out there for you. You just haven't found him yet. Don't get discouraged. Beyond this, it may be worth moving to somewhere where your eating habits won't be a big deal. I've lived in San Diego and the SF Bay area, and in those places, telling people that you're vegetarian is really no big deal. Most people I've been around take it as if you need to eat halal or lactose-free, in that they just think, okay, so they have a dietary restriction, let's pull up Yelp. Being around people who need to eat vegetarian, vegan, halal, kosher, etc., it barely even registers to me anymore. Yeah, I don't think any partner who would mess with their significant other's food intentionally, even on something non-medical, counts as still a good guy. As soon as I got to the bit about contaminating her food, I was thinking, dump this asshole. This idiot let his moron friends talk him into pranking someone he supposedly loves? Like her dietary choice is an argument that could be won through pranking? F off with that childish bullshit. Doesn't matter where you live, where you come from, it is 90s era middle school cafeteria. If someone even hinted at messing with my partner's or kids' food, I would make them regret their life choices and cut them out of our lives like the cancer that they are. My wife is vegetarian, and she hates to bring it up because of how people act. It took her a long time to feel comfortable even telling servers at restaurants that she doesn't eat meat, and she wants to confirm that there is no meat in the dish. For all the complaining about how insufferable vegans and vegetarians are, they are nothing compared to how a lot of people act around vegetarians. It's really not hard to be respectful of other people's choices. I've got an egg allergy, and so I'm always confirming that there is no egg in the dish or choosing vegan options because it's just easier. The total 180 that people have from thinking it's a vegetarian and vegan thing to realizing that it's an allergy is wild. Total attitude change. Am I the asshole for telling my daughter, who is facing homelessness, that only her and the baby can move in with me and not her husband? The husband has lived in their apartment for a number of years. The owners recently sold it, and the new ones are moving in, so my daughter and her husband have to move. The problem is that rents have gone up dramatically. The rents they are paying is $1,100 for a one-bedroom, which I thought was a lot, but now that I'm trying to help them find a place, most are now going for around $2,000 a month or more. They can't afford this. My daughter knows that she is always welcome at home. Granted, a baby complicates things. I wasn't happy about her having a baby. She's young, just turned 22, but I would never deny her housing. However, I can't stand her husband. Let's just call him Aaron for simplicity's sake. I wouldn't invite Aaron over for dinner, let alone let him live with me. Aaron is in his mid-30s, criminal history, hair-trigger temper, chronically immature, and has one hell of a jealous and possessive streak that has caused strain in their relationship, which I obviously do not approve of. Honestly, when she told me she was pregnant, I finally thought that we'd be rid of Aaron. I genuinely thought that he's exactly the kind of man to ditch. They've been on and off over and over since he was about 18 or 19. Alas, if anything, it made him cling to her tighter. They had a very rushed wedding, and this is their longest stint together without any breakups. Just over a year. There's still been a fair share of dramatics, of course, but I'm surprised they've made it this far. Even so, I simply don't want to live with Aaron. I don't like him. I don't want him around me. I'd go above and beyond for my daughter and the baby. They can stay as long as they need, but not him. Obviously, this has created a rift between my daughter and I. She doesn't want to live separately from Aaron. I told her then she needs to figure out alternative arrangements. Well, their move-out date is rapidly approaching, the 15th of December, and they still have not been able to find a place, and she's panicking. She's been begging me to let them stay. I reiterated my terms. Aaron simply cannot stay here. This led to a lot of tears and some angry words. Namely, me being an asshole. I can genuinely see why she might think that, but I also have to think about myself and my own sanity. In the comments, Just Simona says, if she's adult enough to get pregnant and get married, she's also adult enough to figure things out. Either she accepts your terms, as it's your house, or they can stay with friends or his family. You can't have it both ways. Not the asshole. OP replies, unfortunately, that's not really how things work. I realize that even adults need help from time to time. Sometimes a lot of help, and that's okay. Heck, I need help occasionally too. For my own sanity, my helpfulness has its own limits, and I hope my daughter will eventually understand this. I realize they are in a tough spot. The vast majority of her friends still live at home, whereas the ones that don't live with multiple roommates and aren't in a position to help. Aaron, from what I've gathered, doesn't really have family beyond a brother in another province. I know he's done a lot of work on himself, so says my daughter, and has distanced himself a great deal from his former friends. I realize their options are extremely limited, but like I said, my ability to help has its limits. Shut Up and Play Ball says, not the asshole. It's your house and your life. You are being very generous in your offer. I get that she doesn't want to be separated from her husband, but just because he's worked on himself does not wash away all of the hurt that he's caused. Stand strong, do not be guilted into this. Not the asshole. He's a man in his 30s who went after a teen? Gross. OP says, my thoughts precisely. Though to be fair to Aaron, I suspect women his age are wise enough to steer clear. Reticent Redhead replies, for what it's worth, we had a beloved female family member involved with a male romantic interest that was so very unsuitable that we finally had to ban him from holiday meals because he picked ugly fights with a girlfriend's other family members, leaving them and many others in tears. He is no longer welcome at any of our homes because he simply cannot help but antagonize, well, everyone. His license had been suspended, so he'd show up with his big tumbler of booze, belligerent, chauffeured by our relative. Meanwhile, he'd Eddie Haskell kiss up to our elder relatives, hoping to get in on her inheritance. Our elders weren't stupid, and told her that if she continued the romance, her inheritance was in jeopardy. He finally disappeared. Thankfully, our female relative was smart enough to listen and chose to forego the romance. Was a rough few years though. I guess my take on this situation is that you're in very much a rock and a hard place situation, but you also recognize that even adults sometimes need a lot of help, and that is okay. You kind of say that him not living with the daughter isn't an option, but you also don't want him to live there. I feel like, given that set of circumstances and that they've been so on again and off again for such a long time, he can figure out his own life without having to live with you until these two figure out their own housing situation. I don't think you'd be an asshole for having those boundaries. Though I understand that's a potential deal breaker for the relationship between you and your daughter, so this is a hard one to toss up. And now, onto the update. I do believe because of my anger and frustration, I exaggerated Aaron's flaws in my post below. Has he struggled with his temper? Yes, but I should not have described it as hair trigger. I have never thought of him as dangerous. I have never feared for my daughter's safety, nor my own. I also described him as jealous and possessive, and while I do see some of those tendencies, he's never tried to restrict her movements or isolate her. She's always dealt with a tremendous amount of anxiety, particularly when it comes to social situations. As much as I loathe to admit it, in this regard, he's been a wonderful cheerleader. He could keep her at home where she feels most secure, but he does truly encourage her to get out and be adventurous. As for his criminal record, it's all below the age of 24. He has not been in trouble with the law since. It still makes me uncomfortable, but I can admit that he's been stable. In all the time that I've known him, he's had no issue holding down a job, paying his rent, etc. What bothers me most is the age gap. I can't explain that away or change it. It is what it is. It makes me uncomfortable. With that said, people here keep saying that he's a predator and groomer, but I just don't see that. I could very well be blind or naive. For now, however, I will defend him in this regard. Anyways, if posting here has shown me anything, it's that Aaron is not nearly as bad as I had built him up in my mind. So many people here are imagining a monster. He's just a guy. He means well. He's trying. He is still irritating, opinionated, immature, and talks too much, sounds like me, but he does try his damnedest to take care of my daughter. He is a capable, present father, and he loves being one. They are married. He is family. Lots of people have stated that they are a unit. They come together or not at all. I've started to agree. It's for that reason that I've decided to allow them all to stay with me while they figure things out. In the comments, that weird thing what says, OP, He's angry, jealous, dramatic, possessive. They break up all the time. He has a criminal history and almost a 10-year age gap. People think negatively of him. OP replies, "Y'all are so mean. He's great, actually." You know, it's probably over 10 years, right? 22 and mid-30s. Interesting that his exact age isn't mentioned. Yeah, I'd agree with this 100%. Man started out with criminal history, hair-trigger temper, chronically immature, and has one hell of a jealous and possessive streak that caused a strain in their relationship, which I obviously do not approve of. Then he backtracked all of that extensively and in detail, only to end up with the actual things he doesn't like being the age gap and irritating, opinionated, immature, and he talks too much. Criminal history? Oh, it's all from before he even met the daughter, and I'm guessing petty, given that he was shocked people would worry that the guy might be violent. Hair-trigger temper? Oh no, he wouldn't hurt a butterfly. Literally, all of these things were exaggerated to the moon. Hell, I wouldn't even be surprised if he was actually late 20s. Still too big, especially given when they started dating. If it's real, it sounds like someone who had a legitimate concern but couldn't force his daughter to leave, and other people either downplayed his concerns or told him that the more he tried to intervene, the worse he would make it. So when he comes to Reddit, he has to convince people that this guy sucks badly enough to intervene in the relationship. So then he exaggerates to hell without thinking through the consequences of what those exaggerations mean. And half the people who assume the husband is abusive are telling him that even if the husband is worse than he says, he's still doing the wrong thing, and then describe the consequences of treating someone trapped in a DV relationship this way, and he has a holy shit moment. Both because the guy isn't as bad as he said, and because he finally gets why no one else was on his side. Plus, commenters probably gave advice with regards to custody, which probably made him realize that he was trying to get rid of the father of his grandchild, and he thinks the guy is a good dad. And by mentioning custody fights, also realizes that the guy won't simply abandon his child even if his marriage doesn't work out, and probably finally thought through the ramifications for the child not having a loving father, or the ramifications for his daughter if they split up and had split custody. An arrangement the dad was essentially trying to force, even though they hadn't split up. I love your detailed explanation, and I also have my own simple explanation why Reddit's "go no contact with them and burn all bridges" works so well, despite being simplified. First case are real victims of abuse who need to hear that some internet strangers give them permission to leave and put themselves on first place. Second case are abusers, stalkers, angry estranged parents, and exes. When Reddit tells them, leave the other person alone, it's actually also the harm reduction. And there are people who, when told, burn the bridges, will come to realization, wait a minute, I actually like that bridge and want to keep it. It's natural. Everybody wants to react like that. It's only when the person can't think about any redeeming quality that would justify the troubles is when they burn the bridge. Halo Spite says, I love it when OPs are horrified by people agreeing with them. My favorite updates are basically, wow, okay, never mind, y'all are batshit, I was wrong. Daughter just turned 22, started dating the guy when she was 18 or 19, so roughly 4 years ago. Dude is mid-30s now, so he was roughly 30 when they started dating. A 30-year-old dating an 18-year-old is already raising red flags, and not little ones. Getting her pregnant at 20 and keeping the kid, and becoming even more attached, that just screams bad news. If anything, if they move in with OP, at least they'll be able to keep an eye on the guy. For real, the people in this thread saying, wow, I love that OP recognized that she was wrong, are crazy. OP's son-in-law is creepy as hell. Yeah, I don't know, feel like that's a contentious one in the comments for you guys down below. I don't know what kind of thoughts crept into OP's mind in this one, that this is still an acceptable situation going on, because that age gap definitely isn't cool. That's an insane age gap. I'm going to throw my own assumptions and judgment out here. Why are they having kids when they're obviously not prepared for it? They can't even afford rent. Why put kids through that suffering? The 22-year-old, yeah, I can give her some flack for that one, but the 30-year-old? The mid-30-year-old putting himself, his partner, his wife, and the kid through this? What is wrong with that guy? Heavy judgment on him. Getting even more attached now that they have the baby in marriage and moving in together? No solutions from this guy? Insane. How OP has done a 180, has turned a new stone. I am so glad I'm not personally involved in this situation because what in God's name is wrong with all of you? Keep an eye on the guy all you want, but to me, this is deranged. Our next post is by user ThrowRA Not Main, titled, My male 16 pastor shamed my friend, female 16, for wanting an abortion in front of the congregation. I want to be completely honest. One of the main reasons I'm writing this now is because my parents are very upset with me for disagreeing with what happened at church last week. I personally don't think that we should even be going right now, since they're letting 70%-ish capacity into the sanctuary on Sunday mornings, and we live in New York, and the congregation is pretty big. I think this was written during COVID. And while I don't want to name the church, they can fit over 1,000 inside of the pandemic boundaries, but that's not the main thing I want to make this about. A girl in my youth group recently became pregnant with someone who doesn't go to our church. We've talked casually, but we've never hung out outside of youth except for group events. But she's one of the few people who I talk to there, and sometimes in our group chat. And my parents don't really allow me to stay home, even when I ask them to on Sunday mornings or some Fridays. But that's not the point either. I just wanted to add that for context. This past Sunday, the pastor told the congregation that someone in the youth had recently become pregnant and needed prayer along with her family. And while he kept it anonymous, some of the people in our youth group still knew who it was, and this is because her parents told someone that she was contemplating abortion to try and get support for talking her out of it. And she told me this when we messaged a few days ago. When I talked to her, I tried my best to encourage her and say that her parents had no business talking to the church and telling them what should have been kept as a private matter. But she said that she's scared that they won't allow her to have it or may treat her differently if she does, and that they also want her to sit with someone to talk, someone who is a leader in the church. She also said that they keep telling her things about how she lives in their house and other stuff like that, and her dad is also a trustee as well. I told one of my friends from school about what happened, and she said that her parents are probably trying to stall her out of the time frame to have an abortion, and I told her that I didn't really know how all of it worked, but that I just wanted to know more, since she felt comfortable enough to open up to me for some reason, but I didn't really know what to say or how to really help. She also said that they're trying to guilt her out of having it too, and that being in that environment with word of mouth isn't healthy for her either, and that what her parents are doing is borderline abusive. When I talked to my parents about what happened after church, I told them that I didn't think it was proper for the pastor to do that in front of the congregation, but they told me that that's what happens when people sleep around and do things they shouldn't be doing outside of marriage, just like they taught me about purity when I was younger. But I told them that that should have been kept as a private matter, but they said that when someone sins and doesn't listen to their parents, then the next step is to go to the church. And I don't even know if I can trust them in the future to not do the same to me and my private information, if they support telling others about things that should be private. And when I told them that that is part of the reason why I never tell them anything, they just yelled at me and re-echoed shit about me not spending enough time with the family and staying locked up in my room. But that's a whole different thing, and not the point of this. I don't know if I can help her, but since she felt comfortable enough to open up to me, I want to be able to be a friend to her at least. And if there's anything else I can do or say from anyone who maybe has gone through something similar, I would appreciate any advice on how to help her in this situation if she happens to reach out to me again. Edit. I do have a car that my parents bought for me, but she does not. She's 16, but I don't think her parents would help her with the process at all by how they're acting, and I don't know if I can legally by driving, or if that would hurt my living conditions with my parents, and how they view me or her parents, and the potential boyfriend involved. Although, if she needed someone, I would consider after getting more education and advice on how to do so. In the comments, A Long December says, That's Christian love and compassion for ya. When you're completely independent of your parents, get out of that death cult. OP says, I don't know why she reached out to me, but I hope that at the least, just having someone to vent to can be somewhat comforting. The main thing that stuck out from our conversation is how she's afraid that they won't love her anymore or be disowned, to use her own words. And I didn't really know what to say in response to that, besides telling her that I would always be there to talk. And my parents don't really seem like they'd be willing to help much either, if it came to that. Although I really hope it doesn't. If she feels like abortion is her only option, she needs to start the process now. Tell her not to wait until it's too late. Her parents are shit-stains for doxing her like that. I don't know what to tell you. How old is she? Does she have any money for the abortion? Is there a clinic nearby? Does she have access to a car? I really don't think her parents would kick her out, but they're trying to punish her for having sex, which is so sad. OP says, I don't think, and hope not, that they would either. And my friend from school said that they're probably just trying to guilt her and make her second-guess herself to the point where they just stall to where she has trouble having an abortion. I'm not sure if they would help her given everything they did, like telling her that she lives in their home and telling her medical stuff to the church and demanding that she speaks to a church leader about it. Pre-Regrination replies, I haven't read through all the comments, so I don't know if you've already been given this advice, but since you guys are in New York, she can get an abortion anytime she wants, even as a minor. Parental consent is not required. Please let her know this information. If you can do it discreetly, i.e. without jeopardizing your own situation with your family, you can offer to drive her to the nearest Planned Parenthood when and if she is ready. She will need an ID, and if she can't provide health insurance, about $500 for the fee. It's that simple. I know because I have been in this situation. For a pill abortion, she'll need a couple hours alone in a bathroom while the medication kicks in, and then some menstrual pads for heavy bleeding for a few days. The pill abortion is not particularly painful, it just feels like a heavy period. But this option is only available during very early stages of the pregnancy. The longer she waits, the more invasive the procedures will have to be. Regardless of what happens, thank you for being a good friend. It can't hurt to offer to drive her places. It's not illegal to give her a ride. Planned Parenthood would be a good start to give her a heads up on her choices if she wants to go. Just know that by helping her, you might also be called out in church, and your family might also turn on you for going against them and the church. Good luck to the both of you. And OP says, I'm strongly considering doing so, since she says she feels trapped and has no one else to maybe talk to. I also don't know why she chose to reach out to me, but I'm glad to be able to help her if she wants, or at the very least, just be someone she can vent to. In regards to driving her, I'd be more than happy to, but like you said, I also realize that my parents might hate me for a long time if I do that, and her family might try to get me involved or accuse me of something, along with the boyfriend's, if he is a boyfriend, maybe two. If she didn't tell him beforehand, although I'm not sure if she has to. I'm going to help her if I can, but I also appreciate knowing the consequences of doing so beforehand. And now, onto the update. The only reason I'm updating is because I received a few DMs asking what became of my friend. I didn't respond immediately because a lot happened, but I wanted to vent about it because it still bothers me to this day. I'm 19 now, and so is my friend. I offered to drive her to a clinic as a few people suggested in the comments, but she wasn't comfortable going behind their back. So that was pretty much it, and I don't blame her. She's gotten so much shit from our pastor and her parents, and the boyfriend isn't in the picture. The child was eventually born and later dedicated on a Sunday in our church, and she told me that her parents were the ones who pushed for it. She began working part-time at 17, and her parents punished her for having sex outside of marriage by removing her college savings and not even giving them to her. But another frustrating thing was a post her mum made on Facebook shortly after the pregnancy. In her post, she said that it was important to teach responsibility in a world that taught girls to do the opposite. She said that abortion was the easy way out, and the verse about how she and her house would serve the Lord. She also said society taught girls that they can dress like slalalast and be absolved from the blame when people treat them accordingly. And the whole thing read as damage control and shaming to me. She said she wouldn't allow anyone under her roof to have an abortion, and that's what she did. My friend now works 2 part-time jobs, and I try to help her with small things from time to time, sometimes food or money that her parents won't. My parents disagreed when I told them that they were horrible people for staying in a church that would shame someone like that, but they still attend and said that she shouldn't have dated a worldly person, and the whole thing changed my view of them because they tried to use her to teach me what not to do. And we had an argument when I told them that I'd rather go to hell to be further away from them. It was cringy and extreme at the time that I said it, but I'll never step into a church again. Not saying they're all bad, but I can't fathom treating one of your own the way they did, and she grew up in that church as a child too. I appreciate all the advice I got at the time, and I hope life gets easier for her because things are tight from what she tells me while struggling to move out from her parents. In the comments, Larryman says, "They forced her to have the baby and won't even help with expenses? It's just like the micro-scale Republican economic policy." A friend of mine had a baby at 16 and applied to a Christian high school. The school turned her down, citing their moral code and how she clearly would be a bad influence on other kids since she had a baby. I remember her telling me, "The crazy thing is, I could have just gotten an abortion and no one would have ever known, and I could have gone to the school. It's like they're punishing me for keeping my baby." They are punishing her for having sex, and the baby is proof that she did have sex, so they punished her. I hope she's doing okay now. Are you ready to be really angry? NY Daily News, San Diego Christian School allegedly fires a pregnant woman for having sex before marriage. Well, I am indeed really angry. The sad thing is that I'm not even surprised, just disappointed. I died when I saw that they then offered a job to her boyfriend right after firing her for having sex and getting pregnant. Like, he must not have been involved and it's Mary 2.0. Admirable Lie says, "What a great guy. I'm loving the fact that there is a lot more empathetic and kind guys like him in the world. I remember when I was growing up in the 2000s, there was still a bit about things being manly and unmanly. And it goes without saying, F those families, church, and pastor." Like, how could the girl's parents stay in that church after the pastor anonymously doxed their daughter from their pulpit unless they enjoy the attention from it? I've known quite a few people who belong to fundamentalist churches, so while I definitely don't condone it, I understand their thinking. The best way that I can describe it is that in many denominations, their churches are like the Puritan colonies, where religion governs everything, and church leaders have complete authority. In order to maintain tight control of their congregations, both the Puritans and some fundamentalist churches today use public shaming and guilt. I'm almost surprised the OP's friend wasn't forced to wear a scarlet letter A on her chest and stand in front of the congregation for hours on end. To the friend's parents and the OP's parents, the real issue is that she had sex, and with someone not a member of the true religion. Everything subsequent to that is a punishment for her lust, and the baby is merely confirmation of her terrible sin. It boggles the mind that someone could put religion ahead of their own daughter, but that's what these folks have been taught. If thy right eye offends thee, pluck it out. I think that's the biggest thing you hit on. She had sex outside of marriage, and they'll hold that against her for the rest of her life, unless they miraculously change. Remember, if she got an abortion, she'd be a social pariah anyways. They wanted to punish her for the rest of her life for this, and I guarantee you the father got off scot-free. And the fact that the parents stayed in the church after the pastor anonymously mentioned their daughter on stage and later allowed an on-stage dedication after the baby was born, which pretty much confirmed the young person pregnancy rumors, probably meant that they reveled in the attention and chance to prove how strict they could be. Hence the mother's Facebook post explaining why she didn't allow her to have an abortion.